Welcome, everybody, to the 2024 PM Ops Summit. So great to have you joining with us. Thankful for everybody taking time out of your day in November to be here for what I trust is going to be a fantastic 4 hours of deep diving into your operations. We are at 167, 175, 182 live, about to cross 200. So great to have all of you in the house today. Really appreciate it. We also have some fantastic panelists in the house. Brad, if you want to go ahead and throw up the screen, want to just start out with a huge thank you to our partners. So thankful for all of you guys coming. Welcome. And so thankful for our partners on the PM Operations Standards, as well as the PM Ops Summit. This event is put on by all the companies that you see on the screen, if we can get the logos to show up there. And this is just a collaboration of about 9 companies to bring you tons of killer data, as well as lots of insight through today's panels. We're so excited about the opportunity to dive into the agenda here and the content. We want to go through some housekeeping here in just a moment, but let me just give you a little bit of a sense of the agenda here. Guys, Pete, Brad, can you see my screen coming through on your end?
No, it's black at the moment.
Okay, that's not the way this is supposed to work. We will stop the share and try that again here. But while that's coming up, you guys can see the agenda in the top right of your screen. There's a little high-level summary agenda. Brad, if you want to try putting up
There we
the
go.
screen share one more time.
Okay, it is coming through
There we
now.
go.
All
All
right.
right, so going to walk through the detailed agenda today. We've got 235 so far in the house. Thanks everybody for jumping in. In about 7 minutes, we're going to kick off with our opening panel talking about the PM operations standards. Going to hear from the panelists that were part of contributing to making all of this possible. And then we're going to go into our first session. Today is going to focus really on 3 topics. We're going to dive into maintenance and turnover performance in about 40 minutes. So stay tuned for that deep dive into maintenance and turnover performance. We're going to be looking at data. We're going to be looking at the thoughts and insights of the panelists who have been looking at the data. And then we're going to go into a breakout to help everybody be able to assimilate the insight that they're learning from their peers and take away some key action items for improving maintenance and turnovers in your business. And then we'll move into our second session around 12:45 p.m. CT, leasing and renewal performance, followed up by another breakout. And then probably the funnest part of the day at 1:40 p.m., we're going to integrate a little bit of fun. Are you smarter than a CEO? Live trivia game. And we're going to have 4 of our leaders and CEOs on the panel going up against the audience on some fun trivia here. Ray, did you bring your trivia game today?
No, I don't think so. Was I supposed to?
Ah,
God
come
dang it.
on, man. Are you smarter than a 5th grader? If you are, then you can totally do this. All right. Moving on, last session, 1:50 p.m. Central Time, communications and onboarding performance. All right, so that's a high-level view of what we've got going today. I want to cover a few housekeeping items here and just a little bit of what to expect. First of all, we have 3 sources of insight that you can plan on taking advantage of today. We really want you to gain insight from the stage, the expert panels that we have on the 3 topics that I already outlined. We want to make sure that you're also taking away insight from your peers, and that's what the breakout sessions are all about. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. And then also take away insight from your own reflection. And we have a summit worksheet that you can use in this event to really take away the insights, jot down the insights, distill those insights, set targets for your business in terms of how you want to see your performance improving. I'll show you where to get that in just a moment. And then we want to foster lots of engagement. So to kick that off, let's just jump into chat here real quickly. What is one thing you guys are thankful for today? We'll kick it off with a little bit of chat engagement, and then I'm going to throw up some polls. We're going to test out the poll functionality, make sure everybody has that poll functionality dialed in. Andrew's thankful that his AI bot is here, so that's great.
Danny, what you missed was a crowdsourced desire to make sure that we saw a picture of your family with your kids before the webinar began, since that is
I did not bake that into the slide presentation, but I will make a small announcement here, and that is, as of May 2025, I'm going to need to get a new family picture because number 5 is on the way. All right. So that's what I'm thankful for today. What are you guys thankful for?
Basketball team.
What's that?
You're going to have a basketball team of children.
You have a basketball team, totally. All right, so lots of engagement. We want to have fun today as well. We're going to be doing 3 $100 Amazon gift card giveaways. We're going to space those throughout the event. This is our way of bribing you to stay here for the entire event. And then lastly, again, that trivia game about 2/3 of the way through the event. Are you smarter than a CEO? Everybody participates in that. All right, a few housekeeping items. First of all, I want to make sure that you have the resources panel open up in your Zoom webinar interface. So down in your Zoom control panel, you should see a resources option. And this is something that you can open up in your Zoom panel, and you're going to have links there. There's a link to the agenda. You'll see some resources, and in the resource or the document tab of the resource panel, you'll see the PDF guide for the PM operations standards, as well as that PDF that I just mentioned to you for the worksheet for this event. So if you can't see that resource panel, just mention something in chat so that someone who does see that can tell you a little bit more about where to find that. But that resource panel has also, thirdly, a tab where you can see all the speakers and panelists. All right, so make sure that you click on that resource panel, make sure that's open and visible, because there's going to be a lot of great things there for you to take advantage of throughout the event. We're also going to make sure we take Q&A throughout the event as well. So be sure and put your questions in the Q&A box. That's something that will help us make sure that we collect those questions as we go along here and be sure and answer those. And then breakouts, we'll see a little bit more information on the breakouts throughout the event. Polls, one of my favorite parts of the webinars. Let's go ahead and throw up our first poll here. I want to get a little sense of who's joining us today. So I'm going to launch this intro poll. 2 questions. Who are you? I want to know a little bit about the audience that we've got live today. Are you a property management owner, a PM team member? That could be maintenance coordinator, leasing agent, technician, whatever you can think of in terms of various roles there for property management companies, a PM vendor. And then where are you tuning in from? The office, my home, a hotel, coffee shop, co-working space, or a remote beach location? Oh my goodness. Wow. You guys have a really, really good life. Okay, so we'll throw up the results here in just a moment, but this is actually a little bit of an interesting one. I didn't know what the balance of remote versus in-office work would be in this industry. I don't think I've ever surveyed that. Brad, have we ever surveyed that before?
I don't think so.
Ray, what do you think? What do you think it is? Remote?
I'm not gonna put my foot in my mouth this early. You gotta save it till later.
Peter Lohman, remote versus in office.
We are in office over here for the most part. We have some remote teams.
The split is here on the poll. Who wins?
In office wins, I think.
Oh, no, not so much. Here we go. Gonna throw up the results, and we have 50% at home, 46% in the office, and 2% on a remote beach location. All right, so loving life there.
Cool.
And we got a lot of owners on the call and property management team members as well. Okay, very good. I want to just give you a little bit of context before we dive into our first session. As many of you probably know, if you're on the call today, thanks to 303 of you being live with us right now, we just released the PM operations standards in partnership with all of these great partners. I want to throw these partners back up: ProfitCoach, NARPM, Appfolio, Lead Simple, Property Meld, Blanket, Enterprise, Bank and Trust, Second Nature, and Crane. Thanks to all of our partners for helping produce this fantastic resource. But this is a project that is all about helping PMCs move from operational fog to crystal clarity with regard to their operational performance. And I want to just give a little bit of context on why we believe this is such an important initiative. At the end of the day, we have seen in this industry that there is a big question that stands out for a lot of property management owners and team members, and that is, what does a good job look like in property management? There hasn't been a clear answer to that question, and so the PM operations standards provides a universal standard to determine if you're doing a good job, to help you actually have data to validate the quality of your property management operations. And then secondly, we want to provide the industry a common language of comparison so that we can have better conversations like the ones that we're having today around operational performance. What does good performance look like? What is your performance compared to my performance? And then as we have those conversations, best practices will emanate from that. The framework is really a framework that started with identifying key processes, milestones, metrics, and targets in this industry. We looked at 8 processes, 61 milestones, 79 metrics, and defined 57 targets in the PM operations standards. And again, this booklet is available there in the resources panel. I encourage you to pull that up and have that alongside you as we go through the content today. So that's really the framework. And as you hear conversation today, probably some of the things that you'll hear are, well, what is a good speed to repair for a maintenance work order, for example, a maintenance request? And so in order to answer that question, we had to define common milestones, a common language that we could use to define a metric like that. And so we defined a maintenance request and some of the key milestones as maintenance requests submitted to work completed. And the metric that distills from that is speed to repair. And the target that was defined as a result of the study that we did is 6 days for the median and 3 days for the top 25% of performers. So that's a little bit of context in terms of some of the key conversations we're going to be having today. And in the document, you'll find that we laid out these key milestone maps for each of these core property management processes. We'll probably refer to those today. You can have that document up so that we're engaging with this data along the way as we go. And you'll also see in the document lots of key targets, and some of those targets have been baked into that worksheet. So as we talk about key metrics today, you can see, all right, what do they mean? What do they mean by this metric? What's the target? And what do I want to achieve with regard to these particular metrics? And so just as I wrap up here, and before we go to the first panel, let me just throw up that worksheet. I'd encourage you to open this up in your browser. It's a fillable PDF. And so as we go along, we're talking about maintenance and turnover metrics. You can see the metrics that we're talking about, and you can think, all right, where am I today in regard to this metric? What is the key number that I want to focus on? And what is the target that I want to set for my business? So I encourage you to take advantage of that resource as we go along here. All right, that's enough by way of introduction. Let's bring up our first panel here, Brad. And Peter, thank you so much for being willing to host our panel of experts as we dive into the PM operations standards. Peter, take it away.
Thanks, Danny. Excited to be here and excited to introduce our panelists. We have an awesome group here today, and what we're going to do for the next 20 minutes or so is get an overview of the PM operations standards. And we've got a series of questions, and we've got some experts. We're going to sort of have a free-form discussion about what are these standards, how are they developed, why do we need them, what do they mean for property managers who are running businesses. So let me start. First, can everyone see the screen that has like all 7 of us on it? Is that pinned? Are we good to go there?
We're good.
Okay, great. Awesome. So on this panel today, so myself, Peter Lohman, I'm the CEO of RL Property Management. We manage about 690 residential rental homes and apartments in Central Ohio. We have Danny, who's already introduced himself, I believe, and Brad Johnson as well. We have Andrew Smallwood, Chief Customer Officer at Second Nature. Welcome, Andrew.
Hello, hello. Great to be here.
Thanks for coming. We have Dalton Schroeder, Product Growth Lead at Appfolio. Welcome, Dalton.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We have Lior Abramovich, co-founder and CEO at Blanket. Thanks for being on, Lior.
Thank you, guys. Amazing day today. Definitely excited about this.
And we have Ray Haspin, co-founder and CEO at Property Meld. Welcome, Ray.
Hey, thanks so much, Peter. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining the panel today. Let me start by asking, what was driving the need for these operation standards? The industry has existed without them for many, many decades. And why all of a sudden did the desire come about for these standards? And let me start with you, Brad.
Sure. So ProfitCoach has done a lot of work in the past on finance and on standardizing finance in order to be able to help property managers know where they stand from a financial perspective. And that brings a lot of clarity, and that clarity can lead to significant growth and change in your organization. But to really climb the ladder and climb the hierarchy of insight is what we call that. You really have to get clarity on your operational metrics as well and your operational performance. So the first step to doing that is for all of us to agree on what these 8 core processes are. What are the milestones within them that don't change no matter what market you're in or no matter how you run your property management company? And once we have that language and that foundation, it allows us to be able to compare both ourselves to our past selves, ourselves to the industry, using benchmarks, using targets, which is one of the things that we've done in this study, using targets. So really the desire came out of that need. The problem is property managers don't know if they're doing a great job. And the first step to solving that is to provide the framework to even be able to answer the question of how am I doing right now? And how does that compare to the rest of the industry?
Love that. Thanks, Brad. And that really rings true for me. Running a property management business, there's so many different pieces and parts to the operation. And if you make the assumption that no business is perfect, you're then left with the question, well, what should I work on? What should I improve? Should I work on our turnovers? Should I work on leasing? Should I work on maintenance requests? And without really like an apples and apples way to compare my performance to some sort of industry average or standard, I just sort of am guessing basically, well, I guess let me try to work on this. I guess let me try to work on this. Or you're sort of looking at Google reviews and just sort of like reading like the magic 8 ball on how your customers are feeling about your performance. Ray, I know this is something you've really dug into at Property Meld, specifically around maintenance. What have you kind of learned about developing standards and benchmarking companies? And I feel like you kind of were a little bit ahead of the industry in this area. I'd love to hear from you.
So thanks. First of all, I actually think, as we look at the maturity of our industry, like we're in this really, I think, cool time where we're almost on this inflection point of being like a super investable industry. I think there's a realm where real estate is becoming a lot more like the stock market and a great home for money and capital, where it used to just be for those intelligent investors who read Rich Dad, Poor Dad a long time ago. And so our market's shifting. And I think one of the things that starts to get really important is if you recognize that and you think property management or professional property management is the vehicle, being able to understand how vehicles are performing, which ones should be continued to be invested in, which ones shouldn't. And not only the self-awareness for you, but there's a whole bunch of byproducts of that, including transactions, which ones are worth buying, conglomerating. So I think really what everyone's talking about here is a really exciting milestone that is really going to open us up to the pathway of the next phase of professional property management. There's going to be a lot of winners in here and unfortunately going to be some losers in it, but all comes down to getting a scorecard of your business and being able to compare that against the industry more broadly.
I think that's a great overview. Thanks, Ray. So before we go any further, I want to ask about the methodology here. So Danny and Brad, how did we come up with the PM Ops standards? How do we decide if something should be included or not? How do we benchmark? Like, give me a little bit of the behind the scenes here.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So it was interesting conversation starting out because you get 8 property managers in the room and you ask them 5 questions about finance, and they're kind of like, "Yeah, Danny, whatever you say." And you get 8 property managers in a room and you ask them about operations, and it's a very different conversation. Which is awesome because everybody has really strong opinions that can take us somewhere. And so the methodology really started with this. All right, we need to get everybody on the same page, using the same terminology and talking from the same perspective in the way that we think about process. There's been other attempts to define key metrics in the industry, but in many cases, those have fallen flat because the work wasn't done up front to understand, well, what do we mean in terms of the key milestones that we're basing these metrics on? And so what we started with was, all right, let's map out core processes in property management and identify the key milestones that we can all agree are common to all the different ways that we do property management. And then once we can agree on those key milestones, then we can go ahead and define key metrics and targets off of those. And so that was essentially, Peter, the basic methodology in terms of defining the milestones, then defining the metrics from those. And then in terms of the targets, we want to be at a place in this industry where we actually have the data sets where we have alignment in the way that we're doing our processes such that we can actually define benchmarks based off of real-time data. And the folks at Property Meld, Ray and team, are doing a great job of this in maintenance, but in different areas of property management, that's still difficult. And so the first step was defining industry targets. And that's really what the PM operations standards starts with is, all right, based off these common metrics and definitions of metrics, what do 100+ property managers agree is a good target for this? And that's where we started in terms of giving the industry a North Star to shoot for.
Love that. Anything to add to that, Brad?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's how we did it.
Okay, awesome. So let's get some of the other panelists involved here. Let me start with you, Andrew. What was something about the study that you found important, exciting, unexpected, or just really kind of jumped out at you?
Yeah, I'd say, and first off, I just want to say thanks again, by the way, to everybody. It's just really exciting to be here with, the people who I think are the future of property management, talking about the future of property management and how we're getting there together. And I see the PM operational standards as a critical step, right, for this industry, just getting that level of, hey, we're using the same definitions here for the things we're talking about. It just allows for a lot more constructive conversations to be happening. And I'd say the thing I'm most encouraged by that I've seen already is I've had 3 conversations since NARPM Nationals with folks. So just in 2 or 3 weeks where they're referencing this and talking about how they're starting to apply and look at using these metrics in their business, to really get kind of a level set of here's where we are, where we want to be. And it's going to be really, really, really exciting as we get more and more companies participating to get more of these benchmarks, seeing where the bright spots are across the industry. I think this industry is so collaborative and cooperative in many ways. It's something that's really special and unique to see where property managers are really helping, their peers all across the country in this way. And I think this is a great start to that conversation and something really eager to see more of it play out. But that's where I'd start, Peter.
Love that. I think you're so right about the industry being collaborative. That's always stood out to me in getting to know folks in the industry through NARPM and through conferences, and people are just so willing to share and exchange information. That's part of what made the PM operations standards successful, is that people were willing to share their company benchmarks and they were willing to come on and contribute. I don't think that's true in every industry. Lior, how about you? What did you see in the operations standards, the final version here, that really jumped out to you?
I think the thing that got me most excited about, and I can ignore or miss the opportunity to bring some kind of an analogy from the Navy as a naval person for almost 9 years. And your sort of like I would say metaphor, Daniel, of using the lighthouse metaphor. In the Navy, if you don't have a lighthouse, you can't get back home safely. And I think the fact that we do have a lighthouse right now that can tell us where to go or where should we strive to, I think opens up so many opportunities that go beyond just understanding whether we're doing the right thing or whether we're doing good or not. I'm trying to think how exciting this could be in terms of empowering our teams within each company, within each property management company, because now we can set for every team member, we can set a very tangible goal, a very tangible achievement that they would reach to, and that can impact so many other things, including compensation and feeling valued and getting to some kind of a win. Because property management, as many other businesses that don't operate with goals, can feel very, I would say, frustrating when you're just doing the work. You're not working towards something. I think that now with this, we'll be able to put specific goals that will enable the team members to feel valued, the team members to feel that they achieved the win, that they reached that goal or maybe improved a little bit. So I'm really excited about the human element of this, beyond understanding where we're going, but actually having a way to empower our existing team members and reach that goal that we want to get to.
Love that. Thank you, Lior. Dalton, I want to turn to you now. So I love that Appfolio sponsored these findings and this effort, because the operation standards are going to become super powered once they're embraced by our technology partners in the space. What do you see there? Is this something, I'd love to hear just Appfolio and your personal perspective on the operation standards, anything that jumped out at you, and then anything you can share with us about what we could expect moving forward from our technology partners in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think at a really basic level, the more standardization that you're able to create, it's easier to build the technology solutions that are able to effectively serve those needs. So I think for Appfolio, for us, we look at that and it's like, oh, this is good because we can build for depth as opposed to breadth, because there's sort of a narrower scope on what those standards are. So it's easier for us from that perspective to like align with our customers and then create the sort of common metrics, the common processes. But I think what we're also going to find is that the operating standards are going to help the technology users, right? The property managers also understand the value and the return on the technology that they're actually adopting. Because if a property manager doesn't have any kind of operational standards in place, it's then really hard to actually quantify, I bought this new software, am I getting value from it or not? So I think from our perspective at Appfolio, or like as a vendor, it's also challenging if a customer has a hard time quantifying that value. So I think vendors, us included, are going to lean into, okay, what can we standardize? How can we get more aligned with our customers? And how can we deliver something that has really tangible value and really measurable value?
Love that. And I'm really excited about that too. I think you nailed it, that having these standards in place means we're going to be able to go deep. And for our technology partners, both, property management software and all of the point solutions and vendors, I love that now you all have something to build against, and you can say, hey, we're building to the PM operations standards. We're going to sort of adopt that standard terminology, definitions, language, metrics. And if people complain, you can just say, look, we're following the standards here. They were adopted by the industry. I highly suggest you look into that and adopt your own business practices to sort of form and shape around this existing set of standards, rather than our technology partners being put in a position to having to build everything custom or allow infinitely customizable software, because in the long run, that means that it's going to be less powerful because you're spending so much time trying to support every different possible scenario. All right, I want to open up to the panel now and ask that everyone fast forward in your mind. It's now the year 2030. The standards have been in place for 5+ years. And we have all of the trends and data and benchmarking available now for these 5 years. How are you seeing technology move the needle on these benchmarks? Like, how can we deliver more value to our residents and to our property owners with these standards in place with 5 years of effort?
You want just people to jump in, Peter?
Yeah, just jump in, anybody.
So I'll actually say one interesting thing that I found when kind of circulating a little bit of this, and I think it kind of ties into kind of that next part of the question. The thing that I found really interesting when kind of circulating this internally to some operators was the concept of how much in-depth people thought it was. And by that I mean it's like, whoa, we're not tracking like any of this. Like this is a major movement from wherever I'm at to where I need to go. And the reason that kind of surprised me and mildly terrified me is I was like, no, this is actually table stakes. You've now entered table stakes, Phil, where it's like, you need to know this, and then you probably need to know the next underlying parts of your business that are impacting those. And so I think that was probably one of the most odd things that I heard kind of circulating. So then back to your question, around in 5 years, I think the big thing is I think a lot of operators probably don't recognize what some of the best in class and how fast some of the best in class are moving across the nation. And so 5 years is a monumental amount of time. And so there's a reality that probably if there's not some aggressive kind of thought process or adoption or operationalizing of this or some sort of other variance, it's going to really start creating some delta in outcomes of some of these businesses. And so I think a lot of people think they have a lot more time, but considering the inflection that our industry is at, the amount of money that's going into it, the amount of money that wants to go into it, in 5 years, if this isn't basically table stakes for a lot of operators, I think it's going to create some really interesting business decisions where it's like, do I want to be that niche, boutique operator, or do I want to have a meaningful sized business? And I think 5 years is going to be, it's not going to be like the 5 before us. It's going to be it's probably going to be more like the 15 before us is equivalent to the next 5 years in the concept of speed, in my opinion.
Thanks, Ray.
I'd love to jump in on that, Peter, because I share similar sentiments. I think just looking at the market forces, you see a lot of different things conspiring to force property management operators to put more of a focus on operational performance and efficiency than even we've been required to do up to this point. You look at stagnating rents, increasing labor, government regulation, and all of these things, I think, are going to force the competition to be a lot more stiff. I think we're going to see companies dropping prices. I think there's going to be more competition for business, and people are going to be looking for those 1%, 2%, and 3% wins of operational efficiency and value creation that are really going to allow them to set themselves apart. And so my vision for the next 5 years, I'll put it very simply, is that the PM operations standards will have moved this industry from conversations about junk fees, alleged junk fees, to undeniable data-backed and validated value creation. And I think the people that get on board with that, who can create a narrative of data-validated value creation, are the people that are going to win. And they're going to win both internally, they're going to win with their customers. And when you put both of those two things together in terms of operational efficiency and a focus on value creation using data, that to me is the future of the industry.
Yep, couldn't agree more. I mean, the old saying, what gets measured gets managed, is applicable here. And we saw that with the adoption of the NARPM accounting standards. Once people had a standard way of viewing and measuring their performance and benchmarking against their peers, you start to see the whole industry move in a positive direction. And I think we're going to see the same thing here. So we have just a few minutes left. I want to come back to you, Danny and Brad, and if there's time, we'll involve some of the other panelists as well. But I really want to ask you guys, as a property management business owner myself, and as someone who helped collaborate in the development of the PM operations standards, I'm very anxious to implement them in my company. What's the first step here? How can we actually roll these out at a property management business?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Danny. Sorry, I saw you.
Go for it. No, you're on it, man.
I'll start it off. Well, the first one is that is a great reason to stay tuned for the next few hours because we're going to be talking quite a bit about what that looks like. So thank you for putting that golf ball on the tee, because that's really what today is all about, is not just what are they and what's interesting and what's useful, but how do I actually use this in my business? Certainly a way to do this is to examine your processes, whether they are on whether they're, via checklist or Google Docs or hopefully in some sort of workflow software, but to examine your processes up against the PM operations standards, specifically looking at the milestones and making sure that the milestones from the standards are in your processes, which is kind of step one to being able to measure yourself beyond just the start to finish of the process. But where does the real insight come from? The insight comes from the along the way measurements in every process. So that has to be part of the game. And then the other one is to compare your targets with the PM operations standards targets. We took survey results from well over 100 property management companies and have these median targets. So it's a really, really good to know what are you targeting and what is the industry at large targeting? What's the delta there? And then particularly, what is the opportunity for you as an operator to perhaps move some of those milestone targets to greatly reduce the amount of days between milestones and ultimately the amount of days from start to finish of a process to make your operation substantially more efficient? Danny,
Thanks, Brad.
Or,
love that.
Yeah.
We've got about 3 minutes left, and I'd love to hear a little bit from Andrew, Dalton, Lior. Just final reflections as we kick off the PM Ops Summit, as you think about the work that's gone into the development of these standards and the property management business owners and operators who are going to be implementing them. Any initial thoughts for the panel?
I'll go ahead and jump in there. I want to say thank you to ProfitCoach again. I think about the role that the accounting benchmarks played and everybody's participation in that for our industry. I remember the startling stat that all of the liability, all the work, everything that property managers put in to make $10.20 of profit per unit, right? And then I see how just a couple years later, that number has more than doubled, right? Running the same benchmark again, and leaders pulling even further away. And we got to look at financial data, right? And how that's now we're starting to look at the operational data. And there's big opportunities in this industry, and exciting shifts, that are happening thanks to a lot of the vendors, on this panel and elsewhere in the industry as well, where I think we're going to see similar types of dramatic movements across some of these big benchmarks, right, in the years to come. And when you think about the financial data layer, the operational data layer, something Second Nature is very passionate about is what we would call experience data, not just like what's happening, but why is it happening, right? And the causes and drivers of these things. And when you can put all three of those together, yes, it spells Fox, so it's a nice acronym, and there's probably something to play with on that. But, more importantly, we put all that together and you start to get something really, really exciting about the pace of change in this industry, with the leaders and implementers, in this room. So I'm very excited, very optimistic about the path ahead for this industry, for our customers. I'm really excited about the role Second Nature is playing in this. I'm really grateful to the leadership from ProfitCoach and everybody else here participating in this in the council. We're really excited about where this is going.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the future is definitely bright. I think it's an exciting time to be in property management, considering everything that's happening, whether that from the money that is flowing in, whether that will be from regulations that are happening also on the brokerage market. We're expecting to see competition from agents coming into our industry and trying to compete for business. And I think this, together with the PM operation standards, will finally, I think, be the sort of like that crossroad where we stop the race to the bottom. And by the race to the bottom, I mean the race to the lower fees, that this was sort of like the only thing where we're competing for in the past several years. And now we will start a different change where it will be a race to the top, or should I say a race to the value, because with the PM operation standards, we'll be able to build sustainable businesses that will free up time for us as company owners, as team members, to focus on our clients, to focus on our residents, to bring more value that goes beyond the service that we're offering, whether that will be through communications or through other ways that will finally be able to be achieved thanks to the fact that with the PM operations standard, we were able to build a sustainable business. So I think this is an exciting time to be in property management. I think there's a very bright future for each and every one here that will take this with both hands and implement, and that will eventually, I think, will bring value to all of our communities. Because when I look at our clients, I think of my parents, my grandparents that maybe bought a property, their most valuable asset in their life, to sort of like use as a means for a stable financial future, for an early retirement, or for just a safe retirement. I think that by also switching the conversation after we'll get to that point where we've built a highly operational business, is to really start acting as that trusted advisor for them, the one that's helping them get to that goal of a stable financial future, of a stable retirement, which is eventually what they're all are building towards. So I think we as property managers in this industry have a vital role to do better and to also then provide more value to our clients in their big journey ahead.
Thanks so much, Leo. I think that was a great way to wrap up our kickoff panel here. Thanks to everyone who participated, and I'll turn it back over to you, Danny.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Brad, if you want to go ahead and throw up the screen here, really appreciate all the partners joining in and panelists for today's discussion. Folks, we're minutes away from our first session here on maintenance turnovers and maintenance requests. We're diving in deep, all right? So we're going to cut deep into the topic of maintenance here in just a moment. But I want to just give you a chance to get access to some killer resources from some of our partners for this summit. Appfolio has a real estate owner preferences report that they're offering to all attendees here. Property Meld, the property maintenance operations benchmarking report. Speaking my language, Ray, love it. Recently updated as of October 2024. And then from Lead Simple, the property management trends report. Peter, I know that you've been a big part of this upcoming report, and of course, the PM operations standards. So if any of those resources would be valuable to you, just go ahead and say, yeah, send those killer resources to me after the event, and we'd love to get those in front of you. We're going to dive into our next topic, but we need to do a giveaway. And Brad, do we have a winner for the first $100 Amazon gift card? Brad, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
So sorry about that. We do have a winner, and that winner is Iris Solano. Iris Solano, you are the winner of our first giveaway. Congratulations. $100
awesome.
Your way.
All right, sweet, Iris. Thanks for joining in today. And folks, we'll do a couple more of those later on here. And before we dive in, I want to talk just a little bit about the breakout format. We're going to be starting our first session on maintenance and turnovers in just about a minute. And following that, we're going to have about a 15-minute breakout. We want to keep today interactive. So this isn't sit back, fold your arms, and don't participate type of event. This is an opportunity for you to receive and create a lot of value with your peers on the call today. We're probably going to be doing about 50 breakout sessions here. It's going to be awesome with 330 people. Here's how it's going to work. They're going to be small groups, under 10, and we're going to be doing 3 of these, 1 breakout after each session. And it's going to be the same group each time. And we decided to do it that way so that we could build a little relationship, a little rapport. The first breakout will involve a little bit of getting to know each other. And so that's certainly something that will take a little bit more time in the first breakout, but that'll be aside in the second and the third breakouts. And then what the format's going to look like is they're going to be about 12 minutes long. And in each breakout, about 2 to 3 people will have the opportunity to sit in the hot seat. What does that mean? what we want you to do over the next 40 minutes as we go into the topic of maintenance and turnovers is prepare to share, all right? And here's what you want to share. Everybody, I want you to jot down 2 things. Based off the conversation I'm hearing, the number 1 metric I want to work on is, all right, the number 1 maintenance and turnover metric I want to work on is, fill in the blank, and my biggest challenge is X in regard to that metric. Just jot those 2 things down. That'll be the fodder for a fantastic breakout session. You guys can self-facilitate this. Obviously, we don't have 50 facilitators. Do some quick introductions, and then 2 or 3 people share those 2 items. And then the third piece is, what experience can you share with me? Focus on experience over advice. It's usually a lot more potent and meaningful if you can share relevant experiences with the person asking the question. And then as we go along in this session, I want to encourage you to take notes in your summit worksheet, all right? So the top section here is for this first session. We're talking about speed to repair, speed to owner approval, technician utilization rates, billing efficiency rates. What are your targets? What do you want your targets to be? And then distill all of this at the end of the session with, hey, my number 1 metric and challenge is, and then use that note to go right into the breakout and get and create some fantastic value for your peers in the breakout session. All right. And then when you come back, we'll do a little bit of a share what you learned with the group. More on that in just a moment. But Brad, if you want to go ahead and throw up the maintenance and turnover panel, bring them up on stage. Thank you guys so much for joining. We are going to dive in now into the topic of maintenance requests and turnovers. I'm going to facilitate this panel, and we've got some fantastic operators. We've got Kelly Segreto with K Segreto Consulting. Kelly, thank you for jumping in here on this panel. And Ray Hespen. Ray, King of Maintenance and Property Management. Thanks for being on. King of Maintenance Software and Property Management. And then Peter Lohman, RL Property Management, and Brad Johnson, CEO of ProfitCoach. All right, guys, let's dive in to a really specific, granular conversation about maintenance. And just to get the conversation kicked off a little bit, folks, I'm going to throw up a bit of a poll here, and I just want to hear from the audience on what is your number 1 maintenance challenge. Let's get some contextualization to the conversation here. Recruiting and managing vendors, hiring, training, and managing technicians, handling maintenance coordination, tenant and owner relations, billing, and pricing. All right, so we'll get some feedback from the audience on this. And then certainly as we go along here, please feel free to jump into chat and put some questions that would be on your mind with regard to maintenance and turnovers. Okay, Peter, I'm going to start out with you on this. And you have been running an in-house maintenance operation for a while. And so I'm just curious, from your perspective as an operator related to maintenance, perhaps there's a number of people on the call here that are like, hey, like my maintenance operation is fine or not, but I'm really not sure how the PM operations standards are going to play into this conversation and help me both internally and help me externally in the value I create for owners and residents. Just at a high level, what's your feedback on how the PM operations standards drive the next level of maintenance performance for maintenance specific?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Danny. Appreciate being on this panel. So when I think about maintenance at a property management company, I think of 2 major categories. One is turns, unit turnovers between tenants, or you could throw make readies into that same category, which is getting a new unit ready for market. The other category is occupied maintenance requests. And they're significantly different, but they both have to do with addressing physical problems at a structure, at a property. And the PM operations standards establishes a common set of vocabulary and definitions for both of those, and also establishes some key metrics for both of those. So I'm turning to my little cheat sheet and my hard copy of the PM operations standards here. And what you're going to find there is make ready speed is one of the key metrics here. And it looks like we have a median of 16 days with a target being the top quartile of 10 days. So as a owner of a property management company, pretty straightforward now. I can look up the definition of, well, how do you define make ready speed? And that's defined in the standards. And then I can start tracking at my own company, well, how quickly are we completing our make readies? And it may take a little while to get some data there, because if you haven't been tracking that, you'll need to set up a spreadsheet or something, or potentially some of our software partners are working on dashboards that are going to show this. But eventually you're going to get a nice set of data that you can look at and look at the median over the last 90 days or however far back you want to go and say, okay, well, it turns out our make readies are 15 days. Okay, great. So that sounds pretty good. The value of that information is like, okay, I'm within kind of the norm here. Let me see what other areas of my maintenance operation may need attention. And so you may look at your speed of completing occupied maintenance requests, and that's called speed to repair. The median is 6, the top quartile is 3. You talked about that at the top of the hour here. And so really those two metrics are going to give a great overview of how my maintenance department is performing at my management company. And that's really applicable whether or not you have an in-house maintenance team. You know, you could maybe take both of those metrics and look at, well, how's my performance with my in-house team versus using third-party vendors, and have some fun with that. But that's really how I would think about that.
Awesome. Love that. And Kelly, I want to go to you next on this. Brad, if you wouldn't mind throwing up the screen view here so I can share my screen. I want to just go to a little bit of a preview of one of the, we're gonna kind of dive into turnover specifically here. And so I want to talk a little bit about the turnover process. And Kelly, maintenance is in your wheelhouse, and you were in the room when we were defining these key milestones to the turnover process. And I'd love to just hear from you specifically, where do you see a lot of property managers getting off track with regard to maintenance in the turnover process?
I think there's a lot of places. It depends on the team of where they're getting off track. But I think that we have some teams that are really struggling to get somebody out to define your scope quickly, and really understanding how to define appropriate scope for a property. So if you don't define your scope well, then it makes that estimate with owners and that conversation with owners a lot more difficult. So I think I see a lot of people getting caught in that scope definition. Definitely on the owner approvals, we're seeing a lot of difficulty in setting those proper expectations up front with owners. And so those conversations around money are always uncomfortable, but they become more uncomfortable if we haven't laid a great foundation and a great relationship with our owner clients, and really let them know how much we can typically expect for turnovers to cost and what the time off market is going to look like, and been really realistic with those estimates and that value. Those are probably the two main places that I would focus in on. But then really making sure that when we do those make readies and those turnovers, that we're double checking and making sure the work is complete. So we're not getting the same callbacks once the property is occupied. I know we're looking at the callback rate here as well. And so making sure that the work is done efficiently and effectively the first time would be kind of our next big point where we see difficulty with our clients.
Okay, awesome. Let's just get a little feedback from the audience here. You guys can see some of the metrics that we have related to the make ready process, which is for the initial, essentially initial turn on a new and unleased unit, turnover process. And you can see some of the metrics that we're looking at here. This column over here is the median target, and then this is the bottom 25% of performers. I'll give you that header so you can see that. And then the top 25% of performers. And so just at a high level, you can see, for example, for the turn process, the median was 14 days. But the slowest companies are targeting 22 days on a turn, 26 days on a make-ready process, whereas the top 25% are targeting 10 and 8 days. Now, the kind of the next level of conversation here is, all right, what is a good number? What should we target? Ray, do you have any feedback based off the work that you've done there at Property Meld on where the slack is in the process on turnovers and make readies, what the opportunity is, and can you validate any of the numbers I've got on the screen here?
No, I can't.
Come on.
So I think one of the biggest challenges, and Peter called it out accurately, is the amount of people tracking it or finding a great way to track it is super problematic in general. So I've been up on panels before and I'm like, what's your turn speed? And everyone has an answer, but I also seen how people are tracking them, and ergo they're not. And so you wonder how much of this is gut and how much is real. Peter's an engineer, so I know his numbers are most likely pretty spot on based on what he does. But I think that one is a big thing. And then two, we've ran into the same problem, I think, for us as a software provider. Historically, we haven't agreed to the definition of a turn speed. And so even in our platform where we have projects and turns, like we'll start from when they initiate it. And it's like, gosh dang, that's not the right way to do that. So there's a lot of room left there. The only thing that I will say, Danny, that probably isn't emphasized enough in turns is if you think about turns and R&M, because we are kind of talking about it, like the cycle of suck and turns, like how much, if you do a really bad turn, you actually potentially create a churn. And then if you create a churn, a lease churn, then you have to do more turns. And then if you do more turns and so you keep going on that. I think one of the big thing is apart from the speed, which is a complete cost management thing, and then there's callback rates. But I think that element of how do we make sure that the quality is so exceptional. And I'll just give you this one anecdotal point. I was talking to one of the founders of Invitation Homes, and I was talking to him about what causes lease churn. And one of the things that he was saying was how well a turn is completed and how quickly residents find issues with your turn within a certain period of time. So just more on the speed, but I think the quality thing is a huge impact on the ultimate NOI of the property. I know I danced around not answering anything.
No. Hey, that was great. And that's why we're doing this, right? Because we need more data. This is a starting point. And yes, I love the point about quality 100%, because that's going to factor into resident experience. We're going to talk a little bit about some other metrics. Well, there are some other metrics in the PM operations standards that measure certain things like the number of work orders in the first 30 days after a move-in, right? That's going to give you some insight into the quality of your turn. If you have a lot of work orders in the first 30 days after a move-in, that's some insight into the quality of the turn there. Now, the speed side of things, we're going to talk about a bit more in connection with the next session, which is where we begin to talk a little bit more about days without revenue. And from our perspective in developing the PM operations standards, we think that this new metric that the committee defined around days without revenue, which kind of correlates to the term days vacant, but is more precise and is exactly what the owner cares about, is one of the most valuable metrics in terms of driving owner value. And basically, when you look at days without revenue, there's two pieces to that. There's your turn process and your marketing process. We're going to talk about the marketing process in a bit. But one of the things that we saw looking at the data, folks, is that there's a really wide swath in terms of people's performance on days without revenue. I'll just throw this up here real quickly. On leased units, the days without revenue target for companies that are leasing or that are at the top end of this is 24. We'll get into more segmentation in the next hour, so hang tight for some fantastic data on this. But on the long side, you have companies that are taking 62 days, okay? to get the unit released. Now, the difference between 62 and 24 is massive. And what we saw was that that was both a function of marketing speed and turnover speed. So I'm just simply making the point that this number matters as a result, as it relates to driving owner value from a speed perspective and also quality, as Ray mentioned. But let's just talk a little bit about this. How do you get from 22 down to 14 on a turn process, or from 26 down to 16 on a make ready process? Brad, I'm going to bring you up to introduce some controversy into this, and hopefully we can get a little banter because we've already sort of rehearsed this in the back room with Peter and Brad and Kelly on some backstage dialogue on this. But Brad, what are some of the best practices from your perspective around some of the things that Kelly mentioned, scoping and owner approval to drive faster turn speeds?
Sure. So my general approach to this was to bake into the property management agreement as much leeway and room to operate as I possibly could without it being over the line of owners saying, this is too much, you can't have that much autonomy. So one of the things that I did was I had a standard standard maintenance cost sheet. There are obviously exceptions to every rule, but a recarpeting of a bedroom or painting of a bedroom or things like that. And those were standard costs. And so when you signed a PMA with us, you were agreeing to us getting normal turnover type work done, and also for a lot of maintenance requests that held true too, because those sort of things would be, a like for like microwave, things like that. But particularly at turnover, it was okay. If this is a standard turnover and doesn't involve a substantial remodel, and we're doing painting and carpeting and cleaning, you have pre-agreed to have us do all of those things for these prices without your approval. So once we know what we must do for the turnover, it's all pre-scheduled. The tenant moves out the next day. The turnover starts. It's already been pre-approved by the owner. We have gotten it pre-agreed upon with the vendor, and we just get to work and we do it. Another thing that we would do is as soon as a tenant gave notice and we looked for 90 days, we would send the renewal at 90 days and they needed to give us notice by 60 days. We would start withholding rent distributions to the owners for those 2 or 3 months to basically save up capital to handle the turnover. So we would know on the first day what the scope of work was. We would know what it cost. We would have the money. We would get it done, and you could have a 3 or 4 day turnover that way, sometimes less.
All right, Brad, let me speak for the audience here.
Rip into it, man.
That would never work in my area.
Okay.
I could never get my owners to agree to that.
Oh.
And even if those first two were true, how in the heck am I actually going to do all that stuff? So I don't actually believe those 3 things I just articulated, okay, but I could feel the audience, the 300 plus live attendees getting their keyboards warmed up.
Yeah.
And what I love about this, though, is these are exactly the kind of discussions we need to be having as an industry. And we can't effectively and efficiently have these discussions until we have a common language and a common set of definitions. So we may or may not pursue those exciting ideas that you just articulated, but I believe it can be done. You did it at your management company. Other people I know are doing even wilder things, like completing all turns in 5 days or less. And so this is the part that really gets me excited is we're going to move past arguing over when a turn really starts and what's actually days on market. And we're going to actually get to the meat and the heart of, okay, so tell me more exactly, how are you doing this again? And that's the stuff that I love because I'm a very tactical type guy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So Brad, can you speak to those, re-articulate those 3 criticisms, Peter? Oh, let's have some roast Brad here.
I think I said that would never work in my market. my owners would never agree to it. And even if those things were true, I don't know how I would even begin to do all that.
Okay, so the first one is I'll challenge that my owners would never agree to it. And my first question to you, Peter, I know you're speaking hypothetically, but also a little bit of real life. Have you ever tried with your owners?
Not those specific things, no.
Okay. Um, when you come to them with a standard turn cost sheet and you say, hey, I've been in this business for years, for us it's decades. Obviously, I haven't been in it for decades, but the business has been around for so long. When you come to them and you say, this is a sheet that all of our core vendors have agreed to, and we had 3 core turnover vendors who all agreed to all of these prices. So we've crowdsourced this. We know what these things cost. We're presenting this to you, and we're not trying to bilk you out of your money for these maintenance turnovers. We're trying to be as competitive as possible, but what we're really trying to do is substantially decrease the days on market, or now what we would say is the days without revenue for you. And here's what—
don't you love that?
Yeah, you like
that was so cool because that conversation just got so much clearer, so much faster.
Well, I just turned it from an internal operational metric that I care about, which is days on market, to a metric that you, the owner, care about because it's days without money in your pocket. And that's the kind of language shift that I think will make a difference. But anyways, you come to them with that approach and you say, hey, if I had to go in there, get all this, scope it out, bring it to a vendor, get a vendor to give me an estimate, then I've got to go to you and you've got to approve it, and then you have to send me money, and then we can start the work. We're wasting days and days and days. This is a $3,000 a month property, which means it's X amount per day. Let's say it's $10 a day. 10 days is how much longer this could take. That's $100 a day. That's $1,000. So I think there's an economic argument to be made with the owner. And, it's something that Danny and I talk a lot about when it comes to management fees, particularly is setting expectations. What is included in I know that's a random example, but it's a serious deal when we're talking about fees and driving revenue. Is what is included in a management fee? Well, it depends on how you set expectations. We would say property accounting and, just rent collection, right? So I think it sounds a lot more intimidating than it is until you start having conversations with owners and some of the light bulbs keep popping up. And then I'm curious, Peter, where your head is at with how this might differ from market to market. And I know that is a legitimate concern in some ways, because one of the things that you and I have talked about is how old so many of your properties are, which makes their turnovers look a little different. Can you speak into how that might play a role?
Yeah, I ran into a guy at a conference once, and he goes, we're talking about, maintenance and properties, and he goes, yeah, I don't take on any properties built before 1990. And I almost fell over, because that would be like 90% of our whole portfolio here in Columbus, Ohio. So yeah, I do think there's some regional differences here, and there's some crazy extremes, like Boston, has like the whole city moves in one day. Yeah, moving day or whatever they call it. Yeah, it's crazy.
There are definitely differences in region. And in the franchising world, we heard all the time that, well, we can't do that in my market. Well, no one else is doing that in my market is another really common complaint that we get from people when you try to implement any kind of new structure, new fees, new processes. The reality, though, is when people try it, they get a lot less pushback than they think they would have. Time and time again, I'd say 9 times out of 10, those who think that it wouldn't be possible in their market, who actually then execute with confidence. You can't kind of half-ass your confidence and be like, we think this might be really good for you, owner. Like, you have to be confident in how you present yourself and in the solutions that you're bringing to your owners, your residents, your vendor partners. But I think going back to kind of Brad's whole plan, you have to be able to first negotiate with your vendors. You have to be at a size where you can command a price structure that is fixed with your vendors. And that can be a difficult piece for a lot of property management companies, is being able to find those trusted vendor partners that will negotiate on pricing and give you a fixed per square footage or per room or whatever it may be, depending on the type of vendor, per job kind of fee structure. If you can negotiate those, which we normally see those negotiations starting around 80 to 100 doors, if you can have some regularity depending on the class of property that you have, you can have those negotiations, and then yes, absolutely have a fixed price sheet that you can then negotiate upfront costs with your owners, but you have to start with that fixed cost sheet for that model.
Could I jump in real quick, Danny? I am not an operator.
No. Okay, yes.
I can't think. Okay. I think the brilliant thing what Kelly outlined and Peter and Brad, like these people are all have built great businesses or ran really large parts of the organization and can have that conversation. One of the things that I found interesting, if you guys remember the company called Point Central, which was like IoT for like smart home, all this sort of stuff, institutional investors latched onto that stuff so well. But the retail investment, or Peter, I forget what you call them, but it's something else. It's your landlord investor, right? Or your
we have investors, and then we have we call them homeowner clients, or accidental landlords is what everyone else calls them.
So that second bucket that he mentions, like they had a really hard time getting traction in there, even if you could do the ROI with it, is because you couldn't pinpoint to somebody why they should spend $500 to do that thing or return on that. And so if that gap is like wide at all of like, how is it going to impact me financially? It's really, really hard to, I think, ask a team member that is not Kelly, Peter, or Brad to go have that conversation. And so I think the closer you do it, and I think Brad, you're kind of highlighting that, is the closer you can get to, here's why you saying yes to this creates a financial outcome of you right here, and you find a way to make it so crystal clear and easy. That's where it starts to get a lot easier and not have to be the person who's, a top tier influence person in your organization to get that done. But anyways, they're just driving another industry that I got to watch kind of that anomaly as well.
That's great. All right, Kelly, just a couple of quick thoughts here, and then we're going to spend a few minutes on maintenance requests. And that is the new term for work orders, because we wanted to get something a little bit more clear. So maintenance requests are the new work orders. And I think Ray, I think I have you to thank for that one. So thank you. Help me out with the terminology on that. And so before we go on to that, Kelly, if you don't do the pre-negotiation, there are still some ways to speed up the scoping and owner approval side of things. And it seems like those are, if you look at the milestones, those are some of the key milestone constraints in the turnover process, is that initial scope of work done and also the owner approval. Give us some of your thoughts on best practices. I think we were even talking about this last week. What are some of your thoughts on best practices to shorten those timeframes and front load that work as much as possible?
It starts with that very first owner relationship calls. You're setting those expectations with your owners so that they know that at onboarding, if there's any maintenance or turnover work that needs to be done, then we're our make ready process, not turnover. If there's any make ready that needs to be done, then we're setting expectations of costs and time and what time means as far as days off market and monetarily what that means for their portfolio. Laying the groundwork of those foundational conversations at the very beginning is very important. But then preventative maintenance scales so that you're going in and you're doing annual evaluations so that you can start getting ahead of your turnover way before it happens. We know that we're going to need to replace the flooring. We know that we're going to need to repaint the cabinets. We know that we're going to need to do these larger ticket items. We can start prepping for that and even putting money aside if we need to, so that we're prepping for those conversations in advance as well, being that trusted advisor, being that educated person that knows what's best to protect the asset. And then when it comes to actually setting the scope, have a documented property standard. Decide as a team what done looks like. What does market ready look like for your company, for your area, for your types of properties that you have, so that you're not having to then have this guesswork of what work needs to be done, what work doesn't need to be done. Have a minimum standard so that that scope of work setting is super fast. If you have those key pieces in place, those conversations are easier. Establishing what scope of work looks like, being able to have clear, concise bids if you need to collect bids, it all runs a little bit smoother, and any day less that we have a market unit sitting off market is worth it to the owner.
Love it. All right, let's talk about maintenance requests here for just a moment. Before we do that, I want to just answer a couple of questions live from Walt. The make ready process and turnover process have almost identical names and process steps. Can you please expand on why we can't just have one process? And that's a great question. We thought about naming them the same, but they have different start points. For the make ready process, it's what we call the management start date for a new and unleased unit. And the turnover process is the move out date or the lease end date for a leased unit. And so because of that, and because of the different timeframes involved there, we had to define different names and ultimately different targets, although they did come out pretty close. So hopefully that helps answer that question there. All right, let's talk a little bit about maintenance requests. Ray, Brad, if you could throw up the screen, I just want to kind of show people what we were seeing in terms of maintenance requests and some of the results there. I'm gonna, sorry for sliding through all this data, but here we go. So basically, in terms of some of the key numbers on maintenance requests, what we were seeing was in some cases, all the way up to a target of 12 days for speed to repair. And Ray, I know this is where you've done a bit more benchmarking. In some cases, 2 days to validate the work order, 6 days to get approval, 7 days to fund, 8 days to schedule. I mean, that's on the slow end of things. On the high end of things, on the faster side of things, or median is 6 days for repair, 1 day to validate, 2 days for approval, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts in terms of what best practice should look like in terms of validation and assignment and scheduling?
So first of all, I think this is fantastic. Being able to give some of these things out. We've got some benchmarking tools that, kind of align with some of us. Some of it's a little different. Maybe it's because of the technology or not. But I think the big thing is understanding that maintenance repair, a lot of the times, the way people tend to think about it is, I needed to get it to somebody, and the next time I'm going to talk about it is when I get my invoice, or don't get my invoice, or get an angry phone call. And so the idea about breaking it into pieces allows you to start optimize that entire critical path of maintenance. So if you got to do an investor repair, or excuse me, an investor approval, you should understand how long that's taking, because inevitably your speed on getting that improvement, my goodness, approval, I swear I can talk, is contingent upon the amount of information you have, the channels that you've got to that individual, and the ease of saying yes. And so all these things have to be structured that way. The biggest thing, though, that I will say, and why particularly speed is so important, and Peter is going to be the first to break it on residence renewal rates or lease duration against maintenance behaviors. But overall, one of the largest correlations that we have ever found to a positive resident experience is speed. And so if you don't have a granular way to start looking at some of that stuff, you don't have a granular way to start optimizing that process. And I'll give you a perfect example. So we had a customer that ultimately had, really fast speed to validation, a tenth of a day, that'd be 2 hours. They had speed to assignment out at a certain thing, and then their lead time was crazy through the roof. It gives you really good indications around, do you need more technicians? Do you need more vendors and some of those other things? Whereas if you did just look at an entirety of a speed repair, it's really hard to delve down and be like, what should my team be doing right now to fix that?
Peter, do you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I think, Ray, we're still waiting, if I remember right, for the data on some of the other resident satisfaction metrics and how they correlate with lease renewal rates. But I definitely agree with you that speed to repair is important and likely does correlate with lease renewal rate. And I also know that keeping residents updated as to the status of their maintenance request makes a big difference, but isn't a panacea. You and I talked about this on the podcast recently as well. So yeah, I think overall shooting for a faster speed to repair is only going to help everything. I think that when you drag out a maintenance repair too long, it actually ends up being more work than if you would have just scrambled and gotten it solved quickly, because now the tenant starts to escalate it. They call the health department, they're reaching the owner. Now the owner's calling you, and like it just spirals out of control. So you really want to set things up to be able to address the maintenance request quickly for your own sanity. Not, I think you and I disagree, Ray, on like what is an appropriate expectation from the resident. But the reality is you got to deal with the world as it is, and residents expect fast response. And so if you can provide that, everything just goes a little smoother.
Well, I know, Peter, you're a data guy, so we're doing this, probably the largest study on maintenance behaviors correlating to lease lengths. But I think the thing that we do have data on, Danny, is resident SAT correlates to investor retention. And so we're making assumptions as to why that is. Do I've got a better property? Whatever. This is the bridging in between there. But I think we're making that next leap. Like if you really want to keep your investor retention up, which by the way, I will tell you the moment that this industry can get to a 10% to 12% investor or churn component is the moment that all private equity, growth equity money goes into our business. It'll be a phenomenal day when that happens. But one of those big things to do is to make sure that you hang on to those residents, because that is a good leading indicator to investor churn, simply for the fact, like we were talking earlier about turnovers. If you do less turnovers, that's less money out of that investor's pocket, and that is a better likelihood of an investor retention move. And so starting at that as high up the funnel as you can of when something does break, that sucks. How do we get it done in a way that the resident wants to stay at that property? Speed is the best way to do that.
Okay,
I would say it's twofold though. You have to have speed, yes, but you also have to have, we're looking at that maintenance request callback time. Sometimes we've got teams that are doing this really fast, but they're not doing it correctly, or they're getting somebody out there really quick, but it was the wrong person to get out there. And so I think we also have to make sure that when we are being speedy, we're also being effective, and that we're following through and following up to make sure that when something is done, it's truly done and that everybody's satisfied.
That's this verification of work completed milestone. It's a best practice. Kelly, for the person on here that's saying, hey, look, I am not even close to 6 days average speed to repair. I need to get there. What do you think are some of the most common areas of fat in this process that need to be cut, and your thoughts on best practices for making that happen?
A lot of times it's because we have the wrong people in our team that are doing our coordination, or we don't have bandwidth to be able to do the coordination quick enough to get people out there, or we don't have the right vendor partners. I've seen a lot of vendor coordinators consider assigned on a work order as done, and then they wash their hands of it and hope that it gets completed. It's a lot of management. It's a lot of hand holding. It's a lot of follow up. It's a lot of follow through. So there's a lot of people component in this process. I'd say the other component of this is having really good maintenance reserves and maintenance minimums so that you're not waiting for owner approval too often. When you have a toilet that needs to be unclogged, or a quick leak that needs to be repaired, you shouldn't be constrained by having to get an owner approval for those types of repairs. But a lot of times it's people in that process of getting that maintenance request validated and assigned, and then also followed up on in a timely manner.
All right, folks, as we wrap up here, I just want to summarize this. What you're seeing on the screen is the milestone map for the maintenance request process with the median targets in these circles. And what you can see is day 0, maintenance request submitted, same day it's validated, same day the vendor and tech is assigned. Day 2, you have owner approval so that by day 6, work can be completed. You need to take this home, sit down as a team and say, where are we on each of these steps, and say, where do we want to be? Where do we think we can be? And start measuring this. As Kelly said, it is a human thing, but you have to have the visibility on the performance. And that to me is one of the most exciting things about this is the impact of just creating visibility is so significant. All right, so that's all I want to say on that. And then the last thing I want to say on maintenance is there's a couple of technician management metrics here on page 47. We don't have targets for these. Technician utilization rate, probably a lot of you are familiar with this. It's the percentage of total paid maintenance technician hours that are spent working on the job. Now, that's one of the key metrics for optimizing an in-house maintenance operation. It should be 80 to 100%. Some people are getting over 100%. That's another conversation. But there's another metric, and I'm calling this the Ray Hespin metric, because this one came out of a conversation with Ray a few weeks ago. This is critical. This is the percentage of maintenance technician hours that were spent doing billable work that were actually billed out to the client. And if you run an in-house maintenance operation, this is where a lot of revenue gets lost, is that billable hours are actually in many cases not getting billed. That's another conversation, but I want to draw your attention to that, and hopefully that gives you guys some fodder in terms of dialing in your maintenance and make-ready processes. All right, panel, thank you so much. We're going to go to the breakout now. And Brad, if you want to move us on to the next screen here with me sharing, I'm going to give you guys some final instructions on the breakout. Again, you have this worksheet. Hopefully you've been looking at some of the numbers that we've been talking about, jotting down some targets. Go ahead and take a minute right now to think through, all right, what is the number one metric and challenge that I have with improving that metric? And that's going to provide fodder going into our breakout session here. And so again, here's how the breakouts work. Small groups, same group each time. This breakout's going to be about 12 minutes long. It's probably going to be a time for 2 or 3 people in your group to share. And this is where we want everybody to participate, engage, and create value. We're doing the best we can to create value for you folks here today. Dive into the breakout and create value for each other. Share the number one metric you want to work on, what your biggest challenge is, and then ask the question, what experience can you share with me? After the breakout, we'll take about 2 minutes for a couple of people to share what they learned with the group. And with that, Alicia, if you want to go ahead, fire up the breakouts. You're going to see a screen, a box pop up that gives you the opportunity to say, yes, I want to go to a breakout. We're going to have the breakouts pre-assigned. So you just need to click join the breakout. And once you've joined the breakout, you will be in there with a couple of different people, a few different people. If you're in a breakout by yourself, don't worry. Our team will get you moved over and get that group consolidated. So just hang tight. We'll move people around on the back end so that everybody is in a group. You guys can work together for about 10, 12 minutes. You'll see a prompt at about the 2-minute mark, and then a 60-second countdown with 1 minute left. All right. Have fun, everybody. We'll go to the timer right now. The clock is ticking down. Welcome back. And as the breakouts are ending, we are going to just take a few minutes here to do a couple of quick share outs. And I got to thank Andrew Smallwood for that term. I think the term is report out. Did I get that right, Andrew? Is it a report out? Perfect. And just want to hear a little bit of what the value is that you got from that breakout. So go ahead and just raise your hand. There's a couple of you. Well, I'm going to lower everybody's hands. Okay, if you have something to share out that was insightful from the breakout, just raise your hand and don't be shy. And if you are shy, then okay, Mark, boom, bring you up on stage. You are unmuted on my end. If you want to just hit your unmute button, there you go. Tell us what stood out in your breakout.
I found it very interesting that the other people on my call, we all said that we were doing all we could to not do any more make-readies for new clients. No more fun than to handle that, have it go south because of a bad contractor or whatever. And then they terminate, and we didn't even get a chance to manage or list the property. And so we've all interesting. We just did this on November the 1st, said no more make readies for new clients. You got to bring us a rent ready property, and here's our checklist to make you do that. But the other people on the call also said the same thing, that they're also doing all they can to stay away from that. Now, the relist turns, that's what the three of us all put down as a thing that we really had the biggest challenge on, was the relist turns, all three of us. So there you go.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Really appreciate that, Mark. And we're going to go to Rhonda. Rhonda, I have allowed you to talk, but you just need to unmute yourself there. And all right, we got you coming through. What
Great.
came up for you?
Thank you. As I am, please excuse my voice. I'll speak as loudly as I possibly can. As we were going through the maintenance matrix, I was running my software and looking at reports and see that my matrix are very skewed within the software. So in my group, we talked about the work order process, and my number one challenge was, the skewed matrix and those numbers. And I found in looking that we were completing our work orders when we get invoiced. So identified a key issue there. And I feel that we should be completing work orders when they're complete, not when they're invoiced. But that was kind of the assessment that everybody got who was using Appfolio. So I think I'm really going to dive into our work order process as it relates to the software, go back, look at videos and see what those best practices are. And that was very valuable to me. So thank you.
Awesome, Rhonda. Love that. Just made my day. Thank you. Rich, bringing you up on stage here. And what came out for you?
Hey Daniel, what's up? Yeah, we were all about turns. But one of the fellows on our in our group, it was a big aha for me was, and we don't do this, but they require a pre-inspection. So as soon as notice is given, there's an inspection, and they're going back and forth with the owner before the tenant moves out, which we wait till the tenant moves out. We do the move out inspection, then we start discussing. 2 weeks could go by because they're arguing over a $14 faucet, and they take 3 days to respond about that, and meanwhile it's sitting vacant. So it was really great to have that breakout, because it was that's a huge change we're going to make immediately. And the second thing I thought about was big aha for us was simplify. Anything you can do to simplify, it's an EOS thing, right? Anything you can do to simplify your business is going to help. And by doing things the right way for the first time versus messing it up and then having to go back and unmess it up, takes a huge amount of resources and time and effort. And it's just, dealing with a 1-star review or whatever it might be, all those resources where it might be a little bit more difficult to do it right the first time, but it leaps and bounds faster and more efficient.
Love that. Rich, thank you so much. That is such a great takeaway. The pre-assessment, why not define the scope of work before the move out? Get approval, and as soon as that move out occurs, day one, your team is on the job executing. So great. Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to move pretty quickly here into our next section. But I just want to give you an opportunity if you're like, oh man, I don't even know how to compare myself on all of these metrics. We've tried to answer that question, help you answer that question as best as we can with a tool that we want to provide to everybody on the call here today for free. And if you're like, man, I don't even know that I need to know about my performance, just got to ask you, if you were leaving untapped value and efficiency on the table, would you want to know? If the answer is yes, we want to give you the opportunity to take the Property Management Operations Standards Diagnostic. Okay, we've designed this to help you get clarity with an eye-opening experience that will lead you to ask questions about your process that you didn't even know you should be asking. You're already doing that today, but we want to help you do that on 8 processes that we don't have time to cover today. And secondly, help you generate a PM Operations Standards scorecard so that you can see how you stack up to the industry targets that we've been talking about on 60 metrics across 8 core processes. It's going to be a little painful probably to do this kind of step-by-step consideration and reflection, but the output is an amazing scorecard that will help you create a plan to implement the PM operation standards in your business. The scorecard looks like this. It's super in-depth. We're going to give everybody on the call the opportunity to take the diagnostic, and then for free, we will generate a scorecard that helps you see how you stack up on each of these metrics. Here's how it works. You just respond to the poll that I'm going to throw up right now and say, yeah, I want to do the diagnostic. You complete the survey, and then we will send you your custom PMOS, Property Management Operations Standard Scorecard, showing how you stack up to the industry targets on 60 key metrics. And then I'll give you the opportunity to hop on a call with our team to learn how to implement the Property Management Operations Standards in your business to unlock the next level of client experience and team efficiency. Now, some people are asking, okay, how does this work? How do I track these things? And the answer to that is there are a number of different solutions, and software providers are working on this. We're seeing this in the industry. At ProfitCoach, we have solutions to help property management clients get clear on putting these milestones in their processes and then measuring their performance on each of these milestones. And so if that's something that's of interest to you, happy to talk about that. Right now, we're working with a Lead Simple workflow platform to enable that. But again, we want to just get you this value here on this scorecard no matter what. And so hit yes on the poll, and we'd love to get this opportunity in front of you. We'll follow up shortly after the call to give you the link to the survey and to schedule the call first and then the survey. All right, folks, thanks so much. And let's go ahead and move to the panel. Panelists, if you could get ready to come on stage for our second operations topic, leasing and renewals. Peter Lohman's going to host this panel again. And before we do that, I just want to contextualize a little bit of this conversation from a data perspective. One of the things, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, that we believe is most important from a value creation perspective for owners is this new metric, days without revenue. And I want to just give you a little bit of an example of one kind of process change that can have a significant impact on this metric and what that can mean financially for your business. And then the panelists who actually do property management on a day-to-day basis are going to dive deep into helping you understand the pros and cons of these changes. And we're going to have some great discussion. But one of the things we looked at was days without revenue for leased units. And we asked the 118 companies in our initial survey whether or not they list the unit before the turn is complete. And so Group A said, no, we do not list the unit on the market before the turn is complete. And their target days without revenue was 42. Whereas Group B said, yes, we do list the unit before the turn is complete. Their target days without revenue was 26. Now, obviously, the question of what's right or better is situation dependent. But what I want to do is give you a financial picture of what this looks like. We ran the numbers and said, all right, that's a 16-day differential in days without revenue. If you could change your process in one way to shorten your days without revenue by 16 days, what would the implications of that be? Well, for a 500-unit portfolio with a $1,600 average rent, turning 33% of units each year, that would be a total of $138,000 of additional revenue generated for your owners. And of course, the value to you is, well, you just created that much value. And in addition to that, you get the management fees off of that revenue as well. And so the point here is simply, this is an example of the power of looking at what could we do and change in our leasing or renewal process to significantly create more value for our owners and residents. That's the conversation that we're having right now. And with that being said, I just want to flash up a couple of last contextualizing metrics on this, and then I'll turn it over to you. If you go down to the very bottom of your PM operations standards, and specifically, it's this section right here on page 59. You're going to see a lot of marketing and renewal related metrics. And I'm just going to go through these real quickly to set some context for the conversation. Days without revenue, that's sort of the high level marketing metric. It includes the turn process for sure, but it's sort of the overall high level metric for marketing. We break that down between new and unleased units and leased units, and then have some different scenarios under each one of those. Whether or not you pre-lease or when you list relative to the turn, you can kind of see where you fall in which one of these scenarios, and then see what the target is for you. Then the other metric that I want to just draw the attention to at a high level is this metric right here, rent ready to revenue speed. We'll talk about this in the panel, but very simply what this is, if you were to take your days without revenue and divide it between your maintenance operation and your leasing operation, your maintenance operation or your turn operation takes it through the final inspection for the turn approved. And then the rent ready to revenue speed is from that point to when the property is actually generating new revenue. We believe this is a really important metric for managing the performance of the leasing department. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We got speed to listing here for some different scenarios, days on market, speed to first applicant selected, lease sent, lease executed, some granular metrics there. Just want to give you a high level on those. We'll dig more into that. With that, let's flip it over to the panel, Brad and Peter. Thank you again for being back here. Turn it over to you to take it away on this panel.
Thanks, Danny. Excited to be back. So we've got a great panel lined up here. Some familiar names and faces, so I won't spend time reintroducing folks, but we've got myself hosting today's panel. We have Andrew Smallwood. Let me pin this on my screen. There we go. Kelly Segredo, and then Danny, yourself, and Brad. So welcome back, everybody. Let's talk about leasing and renewals. Leasing and renewals, very, very important part of what we do as property management business owners and operators. So how does the PM operations standard, how is it going to drive all of us to the next level of leasing and renewals? What are some insights from the operations standards, from the data that was collected? And then what are we going to use that was built into the operations standards in terms of milestones and metrics in order to drive value for owners and residents? Why don't we start with Kelly? What are you seeing in the op standards around leasing and renewals?
Oh man, there are a lot of metrics around leasing that are in these ops standards. So everything from how quickly we are getting a unit on market to how quickly we're getting applications, how long it's taking to approve applications. Our days without revenue are truly our biggest metric here, though. It's the most important part of valuing our relationship with our owners, because that revenue loss is such a significant piece to indicate whether they're going to have a profitable portfolio or not. And so there's a ton there that we can then have as these little levers. I see each of these little metrics and these little milestones as levers that we can pull to get a little bit more efficient, a little bit better, and be able to really service our clients in a more effective way.
Yeah. So Andrew, you're very focused on the resident experience. You've built a brand around the idea of resident experience and the importance of it. Do you see the PM operations standards as a way to help us actually measure the impact of a positive resident experience? Like, are we going to be able to now quantify what a resident experience means for residents and owners?
And I can give a one-word answer of yes.
But hoping for a little bit more than that. We do have 40 minutes to fill. Yes.
Yes, which is why I'm excited, optimistic about this, Peter. I mean, I think if you ask most people not long ago, how do you measure your resident experience? And I've asked this question like many times to many people over time. Many times property managers will say things like, well, look at my 5-star reviews, right? But I think many of us would say, okay, what is that really measuring? And are there reputation management practices in place that are actually giving us a really clear picture of the questions we're trying to answer here. And so what I love is that we're getting a more robust look, not just at, again, how we're measuring the experience, but what are the operational processes that connect and drive some of those things. I love the new questions we're asking about, like thinking about the move-in experience. How many of those maintenance work orders are you getting in the first 30 days, right, after somebody's moved in? And that tells you a little bit about the quality of the turn. So, hey, you're focused on the speed of your turn, but what about the quality of your turn?
Mm-hmm.
How that translates, right, to people's experience later. And I think the same will be true of leasing. It's like, hey, we want to focus on efficiency and speed. You know, and we've got these distinctions of days on market, are we pre-leasing, et cetera. And I saw an interesting point in the chat. Somebody was talking about, hey, if an owner is responsible for a portion of this process, and when I think about renewals, you know, there's operators out there who involve the owner in some of the decision-making of the renewal offer process. And what I think is really great about the ops standards is you'd start to be able to show them, hey, look at what happens to our process, right? And the efficiency of it and the effectiveness of it when you get involved. And the answer in some cases may be, it's in your best interest to let us run this process, but you have a very objective way of presenting that to them versus just saying, trust me, I'm the expert, right? So I think it elevates the conversations we can have with people. And again, if you're not giving something up and now an owner feels engaged in an important way and it's not affecting your resident experience, maybe you can consider doing something like that, right? But it gives you a way to look at and validate some of those hypotheses or assumptions that you're making, which I think is going to really help us make progress here.
Yep. So when I think about leasing and renewals, one of the obvious metrics that pops up is lease renewal rate. And people toss around lease renewal rates like we've often heard. In apartments, it's like a 50% lease renewal rate. In single family, it's higher. Danny and Brad, I know that we kind of chased our tails on this for a while, trying to decide things like if we have a month-to-month lease, if we have a 1-year lease that expires, but the tenant doesn't move out, they just go month to month. Like, does that count against you in the lease renewal rate? So where did we land on the actual metrics and terms that we're using, and how are those defined?
Yeah, so this was one of those fun conversations. And Brad, if you want to just throw up the screen here, I'll actually try to pull some of this up for everybody so we can actually look at some of those concrete definitions. But we'll scroll down here to the renewal process. And essentially, we did just want to provide a variety of variants, a number of variants.
Can you zoom
on
in?
this?
So can you zoom in so that it takes
Yep,
up?
I can zoom in. Boom, boom, boom. We want to provide a number of variants.
There it is.
So that people could track things a number of different ways. But before I tell you what those variants are, because of the nuance around renewal rate and the fact that in some cases there's legislation preventing people from requiring renewals, and you have the month-to-month factor, the net more interesting conclusion here was we decided that renewal rate actually wasn't the most important metric here. And it's actually resident churn rate, because resident churn rate is a mathematical calculation that will take all of those factors into consideration, and it's parallel to unit churn rate in the sense of how the math works. It's just literally of all the residents that we had at the beginning of the period, what percent were not with us at the end of that period. And that is, we believe, actually a bit more of an interesting metric. And so we wanted to provide that to the industry. And so we asked a bunch of people, like, what do you think your resident churn rate is? And we got such a variety of answers. Like the data set revealed to us that people didn't know the answer to this question. So that's a number that remains to be defined. But in terms of renewal rate, we really landed on renewal rate without month to month. We think that in most cases, what people mean by renewal rate is they're looking for the percent of residents who opt back into a long-term lease. I think we defined it of more than like 3 or 6 months. So that's where we landed on the definition of renewal rate. And while I have the mic, one of the reasons that we think this is important is because there are some important financial outcomes that are connected to renewal rate as well. And let me give you an example of those. One of the metrics that we defined in the PM operations standards is this metric, new ancillary revenue per renewal. And for a lot of property management owners, the renewal is an opportunity to provide and sell residents on new value opportunities that create a more valuable experience for the resident and generate revenue for the PMC. And so these are a couple of financial related metrics that connect both to, there's a version of this for new lease in terms of ancillary revenue per new lease. This is the renewal version. And the point here is very simply, renewals matter for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons they matter is because your effectiveness with your renewal rate can then correlate to and should then tie to your effectiveness with this metric of new ancillary revenue per renewal. What are we driving? I believe that property managers are going to have to get better at selling the value of these ancillary services, because I think we're going to see more restriction on mandatory fees for residents and services for fees, more restriction on those being mandatory. So tracking this metric and our ability to drive this organically by representing, selling the value of these ancillary services is something we wanted to raise visibility on.
Yeah, I definitely want to return to that and obviously include Andrew in that discussion. Before we get there, though, I want to come back to this lease renewal topic briefly, because what's interesting is in the discussion with the council members when we were working on these standards, what we realized is that some property managers are optimizing for the highest lease renewal rate possible, meaning they want every resident on a 1-year lease or on a long-term lease, whether that's 12 months or 18 months or whatever. And then there's another set of property managers who are actually optimizing for the opposite. Their goal is to have every resident month to month for insert XYZ reason, whether that's convenience, the owners prefer it, legislative reasons, and things like that. So that sort of threw a wrench in our initial plan on how we were going to measure and gauge this, and is one of the reasons we went to this concept of resident churn or lease churn, because I think every property manager can agree that keeping residents in the properties as long as possible is a goal that helps everyone win. I mean, moving is expensive, so if residents can stay in the properties longer, you're helping them as well. If you're making it an environment and an experience that they are willing to put up with, essentially, if not enjoy. And then, of course, we win as property managers because turnover is, as Ray mentioned, correlated with owner churn and is also just kind of painful and annoying to deal with. I'd rather, given the choice, I'd rather have all my residents stay in the property forever. And then, of course, owners win because resident turnovers are very expensive and you have these days, without revenue. So I thought that was interesting. It's something I didn't realize that came out during the discussion. And I want to, highlight ProfitCoach for putting together a great council who worked on these standards. And we got voices from all over the industry. We had different perspectives. And it was a big challenge, frankly, to really pull all these things together and tie it into a final product that was palatable to everyone and was actually going to be valuable and useful for 90 to 95% of operating property managers. Now, it's not perfect. I'm sure everyone's going to read this and find issues that they would have done differently, or I don't like the way this is phrased, I don't like the way this is measured, but we had to start somewhere. And I'm really happy with how this has turned out. Let's talk about the listing process. Brad and Danny, what was the metric that we landed on? How are we measuring property managers' performance around a rental listing?
Can you break that down for me just a little bit more, Peter, in terms of like how quickly they get it listed or just
exactly?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Brad, if you want to throw up the screen there one more time, basically this was probably the most challenging thing to adjudicate in the entire process, because we realized that for the marketing process, there's really 4 different starting points. And if you can see my screen, I've got these up on the screen. For some people, and this is kind of what we defined as standard practice. I'm not saying best practice, but it's probably the most common scenario of people listing after the final assessment of either the make ready or the turnover is complete. And so basically that speed to listing there is 1 day. All right, so that's kind of the median target for speed to listing if you're listing after the final assessment. Then some people list in the case of a new and unleased unit, they list during the make ready. And so the median target there was that they were getting properties listed 3 days after the management start date. Okay. That is not the PMA start date. That's the management start date. The PMA start date is the day you sign it. I'm sorry. The PMA sign date, that's, signing. The management start date is when you can actually do work on the property. And the target here is 3 days for speed to listing after that in that scenario. Transfer of possession. Some people are listing, in the case of a leased unit, they're listing after the move out, but during the turn. And in that case, it was taking them about 5 days to get it listed. And then some people are listing right after the notice to vacate before the resident has even moved out. And that was a 4-day delay. So where we landed on that was we had to provide about 4 different variants to satisfy the 4 different scenarios. We believe kind of the standard scenario is listing after the final assessment, although I think the data shows that that's actually not the best practice from a speed perspective.
Yeah, and we're going to really dive into that because that's a fruitful area for discussion and I think is very valuable. But if we keep walking down here, the process that has been defined for marketing, I think is really helpful. So regardless of how we sort of enter this funnel, at that point, we're going to set the market rate, we're going to get photos, and then day 0 is essentially the day that the unit gets listed. So it's a great milestone. And then, at that point, the unit is going to be ready to show or execute the lease within 24 hours. Then we have our application process, which I think is a little less interesting. Folks generally are getting these applications processed in 0 to 3 days. I think we talked about how it's likely in the next one of the things we're looking at here today is what's going to happen over the next 5 years. I think we're mostly in agreement that that's going to drop to essentially instantaneous. There's no way that we're going to be taking 3 days to approve applications in the year 2030. And so I'm excited about what our vendor and technology partners are going to unlock there. But this idea of like how we get into this funnel here and when, I want to take a second and define these terms and make sure that we're getting this right. There's this idea of pre-listing versus pre-leasing. Kelly, refresh my memory on these terms and how you're seeing them used out in the wild.
Out in the wild. Great terminology. I would say pre-listing is typically when you are listing a coming soon, or you're just putting it on market. You're not showing it. You're not taking applications yet. You're just kind of putting it out in the market into the feelers of, we have this projected into the future, so that if you have somebody who is looking to move, but they're not looking for 30 days or 45 days, they can see what availability you have that will be coming online. Pre-leasing is actually going through and allowing applications to be submitted and potentially showing property. That's kind of a controversial. Do you show occupied property? Do you not show occupied property?
This is another one of those where that would never work in my market. My tenants would never agree to that. The instantaneous pushback, which I actually agree with some of that pushback. So, but yes.
I can say that it's really fantastic to be on a call with Peter and Wolf and be the only one that disagrees in the room. It's pretty great. It's one of my favorite things. But your pre-leasing is going through those activities to actually lease out the property either before it's vacant or before it's ready. Both would still be considered pre-leasing.
Yeah. And so Danny and Brad, what does the data show? Like, what is the impact of pre-listing versus pre-leasing versus none of the above and just waiting to go ahead and list the unit after it's completely and fully ready to go, which is kind of our standard at RL. That's mostly, we do a little bit of pre-listing. We don't really do any pre-leasing anymore, but mostly we're waiting until the unit is completely ready before we list and show it.
Yeah, well, again, this is survey-based data in terms of, and the question was not what do you do? The question was what do you believe is the target for your company? So it shows at least people's intuition on what a good job looks like relative and their expectations for that, which I think is very interesting. And so, basically the three main scenarios here were we looked at waitlisting a property, and that data was so inconclusive that we didn't actually it isn't displayed a lot here. There's one place where it shows up here, and that is on days on market. And basically the data shows that if you list the unit before it's ready to show, which is kind of a pre-listing waitlisting scenario, you might shave 1 day off of days off market. Okay. Off of days on market. So we did not actually find waitlisting the property to be a significant factor in decreasing overall timelines. On the other hand, what we found was that the more significant factor, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, was listing the unit before the make ready is complete or before the turn is complete. I'll use the turn scenario here. Essentially, these are the three scenarios. You pre-lease before move out, and the target days without revenue in that scenario is 24. The second scenario is you list after move out, but before the turn is complete, and the target days without revenue is 26. But the people that waited to list the unit after the turn was complete, they expected that it would take that their days without revenue would be 42 days. And so you see a little bit of a gain with pre-leasing, but the biggest gain that the data shows is actually a listing during the turn.
So I don't know how that hits folks. Again, to reiterate what Danny mentioned, that these are targets, these are not actual numbers, as measured the way that we were able to do, or you all were able to do for the NARBM accounting standards. Well, I'm really looking forward to getting actual data. And as this gets rolled out into the industry, these metrics, along with all the others, will be able to start to actually get hard data on some of these things, which I'm excited about. While I let folks kind of digest that, Andrew, I wanted to ask you about a couple of these metrics related to ancillary revenue. What did you see as you reviewed those metrics and standards that we defined in the operation standards?
Yeah, so I think there's both on a new lease, here's the ancillary revenue per lease, as well as here's incremental ancillary revenue added at a renewal. And I think there's a lot of process and kind of efficiency metrics that we've been looking at here of like, how quickly are we moving people through the process? Again, looking at not just the speed, but also, hey, here's the revenue quality. And I think some of these decisions people are confronted with. Sometimes if you operate for a single metric in a silo, you may kind of lose something. If you're optimizing for a retention rate, I would suppose you could have 0 rent increases across your portfolio and your retention rate conceivably would go up, right?
Yeah.
I kind of think about things as, hey, what's looking at things from like a lifetime revenue, right? And making sure that's aligned across all your stakeholders and using that as kind of a guide for decision making. You've got to look at multiple metrics and how they interact, right, to do that. But I think the way we think about ancillary revenue is how can we solve operational problems and create experiences for residents that they're willing to pay for, right, and see value in, that are also, if they're not going to pay for them, then they should be staying for them, right? So if it's something they're willing to pay for or stay longer for, you're going to be increasing, right, your lifetime value, and that's going to be good for everybody. And so looking at those opportunities are great, and this metric really helps quantify and measure how a team is doing that with others as well.
Yeah, there's a really helpful way to think about this as we're very deep in talking about metrics and standards today. There's this idea of paired metrics, where every time you start to measure something, you can sort of create a distortion in your company where folks are sort of optimizing for that metric, either with sort of what we would consider a positive approach or possibly like a gamey type approach. And so when possible, you always want to, whenever you introduce a new metric, you want to introduce a paired metric that's going to go with it and help make sure that the system isn't getting too distorted around optimizing for one metric. So you hit on, just now, well, we could certainly optimize for, resident churn or lease churn by never increasing the rent, never charging extra for anything, no lease renewal fee, any upgrade you want at the property is yours, no questions asked. Like, of course, that wouldn't be appropriate. And so we pair that metric with another metric to make sure that we're not doing our owners a disservice. So as you go through your business and as you start to roll these out, be on the lookout for those paired metrics as a way to healthily introduce measuring and managing KPIs within your business. The other thing that comes up for me with this ancillary revenue, and I want to get your take on this, Andrew, we'll stay on this topic for a second. This idea that we can introduce an experience or features or benefits that residents will voluntarily and happily pay for, I think is still somewhat controversial. A lot of people view these things as junk fees, or, we're sort of forcing these things on people and they're only doing it because they have to. And in some cases that might be true, but where I like to draw the analogy here is airlines. So when you get in a thin, long metal tube that flies in the air and comes back down to earth, you get in with a bunch of other people. They all get in pretty much the same time you do, and they all get there pretty much the same time you do, and they're all in the same thin, long metal tube, but they all pay drastically different amounts. Why are they paying different amounts? Because they're having a different experience. And so if we can look to that airline industry as a model, not necessarily with like the luggage fees and some of the other things, but this idea of like price discrimination and segmentation, I think there's some really exciting things there, because there's a lot of people who very willingly and happily pay 2, 3, 4, 10 times what they could for a better experience. And so what does that look like for residents? And then what nice thing about the ops standards here is we're gonna have a way to measure that. Anything there that you want to add, Andrew? Or I guess as a panelist, I'm supposed to be sort of asking questions, not monologuing. Sorry about that.
We wanted you on here because you have so many good things to say.
Keep going, Peter. You're doing great. No, I think what I would add to that, just piggybacking on what you're saying, Peter, is I think the first iteration of offering resident services and products looked like this, where property managers didn't have the systems or tools to allow a lot of radical personalization and a lot of complexity. And I'll give a very simple example of, we have a filter delivery program, which is where many of our customers got started with us. And kind of like everybody gets the same standard filter. In our direct-to-consumer business, over a third of people actually opt to pay more for a higher grade filter, right? But thinking about property managers, like talking to residents, trying to figure out which grade of filter they want, there's going to be a different price associated with that. Now we've got to tie that out in the lease and the ledgers. It becomes complexity. And earlier there was a quote in the chat of like, complexity is the enemy of execution, so to speak. And so I think just to make it feasible for property managers, there's been a lot of standardization and kind of like simplification there, but that's changing. I know the future we're building is what I think regulators want is the same thing that residents want. And, some people are saying, hey, with the election cycle, maybe this is less pressing. Our view is kind of pressing ahead of just like what consumers want is consumers want transparency and disclosure. And I think it's important, if a fee is going to be mandatory or required, if that's your position, and for operational reasons, it's important that everybody's on the same thing and you're not going to provide that optionality. It's really important to disclose that at the beginning and all the way through so that consumers have a choice. So before they've paid you money, right, in the application process, that's probably important. What I think consumers also want is choice and personalization. That's just more relevant. To your point, am I in a first class seat? Am I in a comfort plus seat? Am I in an economy seat? Am I sitting in an exit row? Am I sitting on an aisle or a window? Like I might pay different amounts, right, for those different experiences. And again, today it's like kind of everybody's getting overcharged or undercharged because everyone's getting the same. A lot of property management's been focused on the big middle, but there's new technology and new tools that we're bringing to market. I expect others will bring to market too. That's going to unlock like radical personalization of these services, which is really exciting, but keeping things operationally simple for the property management so that it's actually feasible and viable to execute. So I think that's really the exciting next stage in front of us and where we're going.
Love that. Thank you, Andrew. So I want to close the panel discussion here on what I think is one of the most important metrics that came out of the study that we did, which is days without revenue. And I know we touched on this earlier today, but I want to return to days without revenue, mostly because it is, I think, the most important metric for our property owners. And if we can find ways to shorten days without revenue for our clients, they will churn less. There's no doubt in my mind. And I'm going to be really curious to see what the correlation is exactly. Like if we reduce days on market days without revenue by 5 days, does that correlate with like a 1% drop in our owner churn? There's probably some really interesting data that's going to come out here. But what are some strategies that we can use to reduce days without revenue using some of the language that we developed here? I'll open that up to the whole panel.
Well, I think just at a high level, and I'll leave it to Brad and Kelly as the operators. But from a data perspective, the two things that we saw are listing during the turn, and also pre-leasing. Those are some of the two biggest things. Now we had some conversation last week, kind of backstage. That was that debate with Kelly and Peter and Wolf. And Kelly, I'd love to hear your thoughts on like the risk versus reward of listing during the turn. But one of the things that came up in that conversation was, well, the standard kind of rebuttal to that idea is never show a resident a unit that looks different from the way it will look when they move in. And one of the things that came out of that conversation was the idea of actually completing the scope of work before the showings begin. And as we discussed related to the turnover process, some people are even completing that scope of work. Rich was talking about this before the move out as a result of that pre-inspection. So if you have that scope of work dialed in, then you can actually have an informed conversation with the leasing agent so that they're not misrepresenting the property. This is what will be done. And then what we were discussing in our breakout last week was the idea of then showing that to the resident and having them sign off on it to just help them make sure they understand what the condition will be when they move in, all with the goal of setting proper expectations so that you can begin the turn process or the listing during the turn. But I'll turn it back to Kelly and Brad for best practices on what you guys have seen there, both with regard to pre-leasing as well as listing during the turn.
I feel like Brad is probably an ally on this with me, and I needed him in that meeting with Wolf Peter.
Yeah, Wolf didn't show up today. He was so intimidated by your counter arguments, Kelly.
Wolf is here. He says he's here.
There he is.
So pre-leasing. I am a strong proponent in pre-leasing. I did it for 15 years without any problems. And the question was posed to me when I was meeting with the team last week was, how do you do that with no problems? What things do you have to set into place? What operational standards do you need to have on the back end in order to effectively do pre-leasing and protect your liability? And that's a lot of training and support. So leasing agents aren't making promises that they can't deliver on. It's being able to do those regular assessments of properties, either before a unit's going vacant, doing the assessment, or every 6 months, so you know what's coming down the pipe, so you know whether it's going to be a property you can show or not. It's not showing units that are hoarders or dangerous or in a state of disrepair to where it's, those ones would not qualify for pre-leasing. Same with evictions. You're not going to take somebody into an occupied eviction property. But it's setting up parameters, processes, and great training so that your team is set up for success in pre-leasing properties, which eliminates, what did we see? The numbers are different by, what are the number differences between those who are pre-leasing and those who are not, Danny?
It was 18 days.
18 days. Even if you take an average of $50 per day per unit, that is a significant cost for your owners for that property to be sitting because we're not comfortable, or we haven't set up the right tools or the right processes, or we're against or have had poor experiences with pre-leasing in the past. I think the question isn't should we, it's how can we, as an industry, elevate and start doing these important and really profitable pieces of the business again.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. That was my approach as well, pretty much to a T. And then really the only other thing to help with that whole process is I'll just highlight what JP said in the chat. He said, control of the process where the PM has earned the trust of the owner to execute the process without asking for approval at each process step. That's a really good summary of incremental growth and change in your company. If that's not the way it's working for you, building that trust, consistent performance year after year allows you to say to the owner, hey, just taking more of it back, right? If you have an established company where you've done business a particular way and you want to start doing business where you don't allow the owner to do their own turn or things like that, being able to develop that trust and say, we're going to do this for you, and here's why, they start to build that trust with you, and you can just get so much more efficient that way. So turn it back to you, Peter. That's about all we got.
Yeah, thanks, Brad and Kelly. That was really helpful. And we're going to wrap this panel here. Thanks, everyone, for participating. And back to you, Danny.
Thanks, guys. Great insights there. Again, encourage you to go to the marketing process, the renewal process milestone map, and break it out with your team. Look at the timelines, ask the question, where are you? Where can you shave time? And where can you improve the value delivery in each of those steps? It's not just about speed, it's also about quality. Speaking of quality, that's what we're coming back to for the third discussion here. You see the agenda at the top of your screen. We're going to come back after this breakout for two fun features. One, we're going to do Are You Smarter Than a CEO trivia. The CEOs are already prepping here in the green room. All right. So they're getting their game faces on. And audience, this is you up against some of the leaders and CEOs of the industry. So be sure and join us in about 15 minutes for that. Then we'll go into our last panel on communication. I think this is a lot of where the value magic happens. In the meantime, we're going to do another breakout. We got some great feedback from value in terms of the value received in the first breakout. So if you didn't join it the first time, I want to encourage you to dive in. They're small groups. We're going to try to keep the groups consistent as much as possible. It's going to be about 12 minutes long, 2 to 3 people in the hot seat. And right now, as we transition, write down the #1 metric you want to work on related to leasing and renewals, what your biggest challenge is with that metric, and then ask the rest of the group what experience they can share with you. Again, if you're new or if you're just joining us, be sure and pull up the summit worksheet. Sadie, Alicia, if you could drop that in chat again. It's also in the resources panel. And this is where you guys can be looking at some of these targets that we talked about, looking at the specific targets that you want to write in, and then summarizing your key challenge here as well. All right. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and pivot to the breakout. And in terms of the instructions there, Alicia is going to turn it on, and you're going to see a box that says join a breakout room. Hit join the group, and you'll be warp speeded over to a fantastic value-laden property management breakout discussion. See you guys back in 12 minutes. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining the breakout, and we'll see people start filing back in here. It's going to be great to dive into our last two segments here for the day. Really appreciate all of you guys sticking with us. Such great participation and attendance today. Thanks so much to all of you for diving into the breakouts. Excited to hear what kind of insight you all came away with from your breakouts. So as we all filter back in here, I just want to mention again some killer resources that our partners have offered to provide to the attendees today. And if you haven't gotten a chance to say, yeah, I want those resources, I'm going to just throw up a quick poll here and give everybody a chance to say, yeah, I would love that. If you already said yes, we've got you. But if you haven't had a chance to opt into these resources that I have up on the screen, go ahead and just click yes when each of our partners will send these to you afterwards. A real estate owner preferences report from Matt Folio, a benchmarking report on maintenance from Property Meld, property management trends report from Lead Simple. Really excited about the research here. And then we'll, of course, send you the PM operations standards from ProfitCoach. So just feel free to say yes to that, and our partners will send that to you after the fact. All right, let's do a quick share out. And what insights did you walk away with from the last breakout? Go ahead and raise your hand there in the panel, the control panel. Go ahead and just raise your hand if you have something to share. Rich, you were first up. I'm going to go back to you. Come on stage.
Hey, man, I'm back.
All right.
I've got something to say. You know, it was interesting when Peter mentioned the cost segmentation, you know, and variation for residents. You know, we do it with owners, right? We have a platinum package, right? We give them more benefit. But with residents, you know, and, you know, one of my cohorts is from Oregon. He can't really just charge certain things to residents, but if they volunteer for it, he could, right? And so we started brainstorming different ideas on what could you offer for residents that they would pay for voluntarily, that doesn't add too much complexity to your business, right? Because if you just like Andrew was talking about with a filter, you know, I want to deal with two different sizes of filters for $3 a month. Not really, right? And I'm only getting $1 of the three, right? So it's interesting to discuss that. And you know, we had yard care, pest control, smart locks, security cameras, water savers, water filters, LED package, you know, whole house water filter, reverse osmosis filter. We had a lot of ideas, and I thought it'd be an interesting thing. If people have other ideas, put them in the chat. I'd love to see them, because that's something we want to really wrap our head around.
That's awesome. Love that, Rich. Thank you so much. And folks, yeah, follow up on that. What are some of the ideas that you have following up on what Rich shared there? And Rich, if you could just post the question in chat so people that are just coming back in can see the specific question, that would be great. Articulate one more time.
We do the pest control right now, and it's pretty successful. You know, we pay our leasing coordinator a small fee to sell it, right? And you know, we use Pest Share, and they pay a flat amount, and we make a few bucks, and everybody wins. So
that's great.
Yeah, I'll post all the different ideas that we had in the chat.
Awesome. Sweet. Okay, we'll go one to JP real quickly. JP, what came up for you? Thanks for jumping on here to share your insights.
Yeah, thanks for picking me. Yeah, one question, for me, one metric that I haven't seen is the desirability, how to measure desirability of a place, because it plays into so many factors in terms of make ready. What do I need to do on make ready, in terms of how the tenant picks you as the choice of a property they want to live in. So how do you measure desirability so that you have some kind of a metric you can compare one rental with another? That gives you an argument with an owner, especially when your desirability factor with others, let's say, is at 10 and your property is at 7. And how are you going to get it to a 10? You need to do A, B, C. And so be able to kind of have some points to discuss with your owner and get that desirability up where you're above average when you look in the market.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that. We'll have to work on that. That's good, good ideation there. Appreciate it much. All right. It's the time you've been waiting for. We're going to give away our second giveaway of a $100 Amazon gift card. And by the way, you have to be here to be drawn. Okay. So our team in the background is drawing from the live attendee pool. And we're going to do one more of these after the last session. So don't leave early. Stay all the way. You could, the winner could be you. And then we're going to go to, are you smarter than smarter than a CEO trivia game? And Brad, who's the winner of this second $100 Amazon gift card?
Okay, this is a big moment. The winner, and I'm going to do my best on the last name, but it's the only Gerald we got. It's Gerald Stoltzfus.
Gerald Stoltzfus. Let's
Gerald
give it up for Gerald. All right,
It's an
fantastic.
excellent last name.
Okay, everybody, let's bring up our contestants, and I really feel like this is big to have some of the biggest and brightest names in the industry going up with the entire industry on some very important poll questions here. I'm going to turn it over to our host for Are You Smarter Than a CEO, Pablo Gonzalez. Take it away, Pablo.
Thank you, Daniel. All right. Biggest, brightest names in the industry and me. Thanks for inviting me, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to host this thing. Have a good time here. Is everybody ready for the last hour of the Ops Summit? Are you smarter than a CEO? Yeah?
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
I should probably have the chat open just to see everybody just freaking out about it. Okay, let's do this. Introducing first our CEO and co-founder of Property Meld, Ray Hespin. Say hello, Ray.
Hey, Pablo. What sort of abuse am I signing up for here, by the way, real quick?
Very minor abuse. Very minor abuse. I promise. I promise. Second up, we have the co-founder and CEO of Blanket, Leo Abramovich. Welcome, Leor.
Correct. Awesome.
Sorry about that,
Ready
man.
to play. No, all good.
Oh, I know. You stay ready. You don't need to get ready because you stay ready, right?
100%.
All right. Who else we got here? We have up next is guys. Do we have Andrew Smallwood on the panel?
I do not have Andrew Smallwood. I am not nearly as cool as Andrew Smallwood, but I'm slotting in right here.
Oof. Coming in hot. Brad Johnson, CEO of ProfitCoach, signing up for the same minor abuse as everybody else.
And Wolf is here. Wolf is going to have to sit in for Peter. Wolf, are you online?
Oh, I'll throw him in here. Is he here?
Wolf, can you sit in for me? Come on, man. All right.
Wolf should have to. And Wolf, I'm just telling you, buddy, I got my pin back. So
There he is.
that.
Okay, Brad, throw him in.
I just sent Wolf in.
There he is, co-founder of Crane Community, Wolfgang Krosky. Say hello, Wolf.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing great, buddy. Doing great. Great to see you all. All right, are you guys ready for this? Are you guys ready for the pressure cooker that is Are You Smarter Than a CEO? Is everybody here a CEO? Okay. Yeah. Good, confirmed. Well, they snuck Andrew Smallwood in here originally, who's just a chief customer officer, so I had to just ask. All right, everybody. First question coming up. Oh, by the way, we're going to do a question, and then as the panelists, as the CEOs are writing their answers, I'm going to have a bonus question for one at a time as well. So I gotta rewrite what my jokes here are since we switched a couple panelists. But
hey, Brad, Andrew's here. Why don't you throw Brad in instead of you? Or throw Andrew in instead of you?
Yeah, happily. Let me get out of here.
Oh, look at that. Sneaking in right under the gun. The Chief Customer Officer of Second Nature, Andrew Smallwood. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Pablo, good to see you, amigo.
Good to see you too, amigo. All right, let's get ready for the first question, everybody. I'm gonna read the question, then a poll's gonna show up. The panelists are gonna give their answers. I'm gonna keep track right here, and then right here I'm gonna put the crowd score to see who is actually smarter than a CEO. So here's the first question. Across the nation, what is the range of days after end of tenancy in which you're required to return a resident's security deposit? Now, that could be option number 1, 14 to 30 days. Option number 2, 21 to 30 days. Option number 4, 14 to 60 days. Option number 4, that was 3. Option number 4, 30 to 60 days. I'll wait for the panelists to write down their answers. And as you're writing down, Ray, you get the bonus question in this round. And that is, which one of these options is closest to the number of people per square mile in South Dakota, Ray? Is it?
Oh, you're gonna have to go lower, Pablo. I don't see a 0 to 1.
All right. Is it a growing market, Ray? Are people moving to South Dakota? Is it
Oh
a
my
net in-migration,
goodness.
net out-migration?
You know, just real quick, normally they used to let us out one at a time in South Dakota, but because our population has grown so much, they let us out 2 at a time. So
Big. You heard it here, folks. You heard it here first, folks. South Dakota is booming. All right, let's get the panelists to offer their answers. Let's go in reverse order. Andrew, what did you answer?
I said I'm gonna say 14 to 60.
14 to 16. Andrew,
I believe that was C, which was always my answer on multiple choice questions where I wasn't 100% sure.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I thought it was a C or no question. All right, Wolf, what was your answer?
21 to 30.
Ooh.
Which one is that? Is that A, B, or C?
I don't know.
That
It's
is
21
B.
to 30.
That is B.
That's B. All right. Good. I'm clearly underprepared here. Lior, what is your answer, my friend?
I would say 14 to 30.
40 to 30.
14 to 30, that's A.
A. And Ray, after your guest question.
well, now that Wolf answered his, I want to go backwards, but I said 14 to 60. Gosh, dang it.
All right. Danny, are you ready to show us if the crowd?
Yeah, let's go with what I'm throwing up the audience answer right here. And I am the data guy coming to tell you that ChatGPT told me that the industry range was 14 to 60. 14 to 60.
Yeah.
I verified this. California is the shortest at 14, and there are a number of states, including
No, California's 21.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay,
we got
sorry.
some hallucination challenge flag on the field.
Might not have been California. Stand by. There's a 14.
No. I wasn't. No. California is 21. It's another state that's 14. I don't have the right off the. Okay, there we go. Matthew Tandy, Hawaii's 14. All right, I'm vindicated.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
And North Carolina is 16.
Wolfgang's not competitive at all.
These are ChatGPT generated questions and answers. I missed that part. I was helping the client. And like, how can 14 to 60?
All
That's
right,
the
let's
whole
move
freaking
on.
thing.
Back to the moderator.
All right.
Back to the
All right.
moderator.
If I am correct in my scorekeeping, that is 1 point for Andrew, 0 points for everybody else. Am I correct here?
Hey,
Oh, no, I think
whoa,
Ray.
I got
Ray gets a
that one
point.
in too.
Is
I
it
was
okay? So then
bumping too.
So
The
then I need
audience-
to keep track of what these A, B's, or C's are before they come off the stage.
I'm gonna start running this audio through AI so it can just like,
Hey,
see if the answers it gives are accurate.
if you can find one shorter than 14 or longer than 60, you may appeal afterwards.
Okay. Question number 2. In what year was the Fair Housing Act passed in the United States?
I'm going to be throwing that up for
No
the audience
Googling.
here.
No
Yep.
Googling. No Googling. All the
Option-
PMs are gonna know this immediately. What do
No
you guys-
cheaters.
How much do you know?
Option number 1. So we'll call A is 1964. B is 1968. C is 1971. Or D is 1978.
Well, we know
And-
it's B or D based on test taking strategies that you have 2 similar ones. That's usually your pair that you got to narrow it down to.
That's the reverse psychology they want you to think about.
That's
Wolfgang.
what we wanted you to think.
Competing test taking strategy, hard hitting between Andrew Smallwood and Wolf. Wolf, you get the bonus question on this one. Which one of these numbers is most similar to the amount of applicants you get to Crane Community every single week?
That's a good one.
I thought you
We
might
only
make-
have applications twice a year, so
Doesn't mean that people don't want it. Doesn't mean
that's
that people
right.
don't
We
want
do
it.
have a
Just
waiting
saying.
list.
Just saying. All right. Do we have the answers in? Let's go.
We do,
Let's go
yeah.
again.
I'm going to end the poll. So go
Okay.
ahead and get your
Poll
answers.
has ended. Ray, you are up first this time, my friend. What did you
All
answer?
right. You know, I'm going to go with C never fails. I've got 1971 again.
Okay,
For
1971, going explicitly against Wolf's best advice. Leor, what is your answer?
I remember it was in the 60s, so I'll go for 68.
68,
I think.
a B for Leor. All right, cool. Andrew, what is your answer?
I'm pretty confident 64 was like civil rights. I'm gonna go with Leor on 68.
68. Okay, Andrew and Leor. All right, and Wolf, are you sticking true to your B or D?
I am. I just did my continuing ed. It is April 11th, 1968. Lyndon B. Johnson.
Hope so. Hope so.
Oof. All right.
Did
all
you
right,
just
Danny,
give
what
the
does the
day,
audience say?
Wolfgang?
I did. I told you. I just finished my continuing ed for something. That was one of the questions. So it's fresh in my memory.
Audience says 1968. What is the answer, fellas?
It's 1968.
It is 1968. Look at that. Okay, this was a bonanza here. Lear gets a point. Andrew gets a point. Wolf gets a point. Oh, I got a substitute for Peter over here. Yep. And you, audience, you are officially at least as smart as a CEO right now. So congratulations for that. You must feel terrific. All right. So now for question number 3. What state has the most mobile homes per capita? A is South Carolina. B is Tennessee. C, Kentucky. Or D, South Dakota.
That was for you, buddy.
That was per capita is the operative phrase there, everyone.
Can I like phone a friend? Can I like ask Wolf GPT, who's like Chat GPT's cousin with a broker's license? Yeah.
Darren asked why I used an accent for Kentucky. It's for love. We imitate those who we love. It's the greatest source of flattery. I love Kentucky. Andrew, you get the guest question here. As the resident of the South, and since the South is so well represented here, how many mobile homes do you see on your way to work every single day in Tennessee?
I've lived in Kentucky and Tennessee, and I'm not sure I've counted them, but I'm going to go with Ray Hespin's anecdata here and say Kentucky will be my answer. C.
Well, that wasn't, you jumped the gun. I was making a joke about how Tennessee has it, and then you were going to talk about how Nashville is actually this booming city, and like we get to re-examine our beliefs about the South. Go ahead, you can start again.
You alley-ooped and I threw it over the backboard there. Sorry, Pablo.
I got you, buddy. I got you. All right, let's go to the CEOs, shall we? Leor, you are up first this time, my friend. What is your answer?
I will go for Kentucky.
Okay.
I feel better already.
Leor has Kentucky.
I have no clue. Completely guessing.
Yeah.
Completely guessing.
How about Wolf GPT? Wolf GPT, what does your interface say?
Kentucky.
Feels good. Feels good.
Okay. Wolf is on Kentucky. Ray, how about yourself? How about you?
I feel like we all are dogging on Kentucky that we don't know the answer, but we just assume it's Kentucky. I love all you Kentuckians, by the way.
It's a beautiful place. I'm not gonna lie. What about you, Andrew? What do you say?
I say Kentucky, and for those who haven't lived there, the way you say Louisville, the fewer syllables, the more local you are. So it's not Louisville or Louisville, it's Louisville. Louisville. Great town, amazing place. Love my Kentuckians, but that's my answer. C, final answer.
Agreed. If you've never done the Bourbon Trail, it is like Napa Valley for American whiskey. It is phenomenal. Highly, highly recommend Kentucky. Danny, what does the audience say?
The audience says Kentucky.
Everybody is together here. Everybody is together. Well, do you want to tell them or should I tell them, Danny?
Yeah, I'll let you. They might not believe me this time.
Okay. Well, I got news for y'all. You're wrong. It is South Carolina. South Carolina.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wolf, it was the similar answers. It had to be one of those.
Yeah.
South. The two South states.
As a proud North Carolina resident, this question came directly from me. We love to dog on South Carolina.
Is there a rivalry between North and South Carolina? I didn't know.
There's not a rivalry if there's no comparison.
Speaking from somebody who has a counterpart that is a North neighbor, yes, that is. There's always rivalry between the North and the South states.
Well, the good news is Michael McVetti and Miranda Honeycutt were both smarter than CEOs on this one, fellas. So, there you go. All right. But right now we have Andrew in a commanding lead, double the points of everybody else. And then everyone else tied at 1. So coming into this last stretch, Andrew can take it home, or everybody can tie, or there's maybe 1 or 2 other options. So you all ready for the last question? Which state has a provision that requires landlords to warn tenants of the presence of ghosts?
Wow.
Is it A, California, B, Washington, C, Texas, or D, New York? And Leo, I see you thinking real hard, but the bonus question is for you. So
let have it. Let's have it.
What is, if you could only fundraise in one state of these, which one would it be?
It's an easy question. Easy question. I'm flying straight to California.
All right. All right. They didn't all move to Texas already? I thought everybody moved to Texas.
They're starting. The process is starting. And actually, some of them are coming here to Miami. Miami is becoming a very interesting tech scene as well. Yeah.
Silicon Beach.
But California is, and New York is also a good contender for that. But man, I don't know the answer for this one.
All right. Well, lucky for you, you're going to go last because you got the bonus question. We will start right now with Andrew. What'd you pick, bud?
Gosh, I didn't pick. In this moment, I'm going to go Washington State.
Washington State. Andrew thinks Washington State believes in ghosts. All right. Up next is Ray. Ray, what is your answer, my friend?
I am going to go based purely off the fact of which states were ratified in which order, and assuming there might have been a proclivity to believe in more ghosts earlier on. Okay. I'm going to go D, New York.
Wow.
So
a lot of strategy and a lot of big words. That was really impressive. Right? Very good guess. All right, Wolf, how about you, sir? What does Wolf GPT say?
So Wolf GPT says that if it's not a California law and it's crazy, it has to go to the more crazy state, and that would be New York.
Okay, Wolf GPT agrees with Ray and his big words. All right, and last but not least, Leo, you got some time to see everybody else pick? What do you say?
New York. New York it is for sure. Sure.
It's a cheat code, man. You got to go last. All right, what does the audience say, Danny?
Audience by a small margin.
By a hair.
33% say New York. 30% say California.
New York by a hair. New York by a hair. Like a
California,
photo finish.
You have to disclose deaths within 3 years, but not ghosts.
So only deaths, only if it's haunted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lost track there. All right. The answer, Ray's logic holds true. Super impressive logic, sir. Going by order of ratified state and the proclivity or proximity to believe in the supernatural, terrestrial. I don't know. I was trying to think of big words. Right. You got that one right, man. So Ray, Wolf, Leor, and the audience each get one.
I feel like Vanderbilt football right now, which is just squandering my lead and snatching feet from the jaws of victory here.
Well, you should feel more like Vanderbilt soccer because we have a tie, my friends.
Wow.
And the answer to the real question posed by this show is that no, you are just equally as smart as a CEO, dear audience. Thanks, guys. Thanks for letting me host. That was fun.
Love it, guys.
Right.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Pablo.
so much. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Andrew, Wolf, Leor. All right, let's dive into our last panel of the day. And folks, we are diving into communication and onboarding. Like I said a few minutes ago, so much of the magic around value creation happens in the area of communication. All right, Brad, do you want to go ahead and bring up the panel? We've got Pablo, your host for Are You Smarter Than a CEO? Pablo, great job. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to talk in a regular voice now. I'm just not going to, I'm not going to do this thing. Yeah.
The reason we wanted Pablo online is because Pablo is one of maybe very, very bright mind on messaging and communication. in the PM industry, and has been with JWB Capital for a number of years, running a lot of their content strategies, is now with Vendaroo, and again, continuing to bring value to our industry in a number of different ways. We have back with us Lior Abramovich with Blanket, and had some great conversation with Lior about messaging, preparing for this event. So I'm excited to hear what Lior has to share with us. Wolf, going to give us not GPT generated insights. These are going to be real insights from the brain of Wolfgang Kroski and Brad Johnson, CEO here at ProfitCoach.
Thank you, Rick.
So we are in for the last panel here. Thanks everybody for joining. And folks, again, remind you to pull up that worksheet as we dive in here to the last segment. Brad, if you want to go ahead and give me the screen share.
Sir.
Just going to point you to some key metrics that we're going to be talking about as displayed at the bottom of this worksheet. First reply time, the median target based on our research is 2.5 days. Average response, 2.5 hours, excuse me. Average response time in business hours is 4. And we also introduced some metrics in this study. And I think, Wolf, these came from you that we don't yet have data on, but first month resident inbound contacts, first month owner inbound contacts. And then we'll be talking about some other metrics here as well. Certainly things like number of touches to resolve, play in, but really the bigger conversation that we want to have, in addition to speed, is the quality of communication and really the messaging around communication. And one of the reasons that I think that this is so important is that we are talking a lot about value. Again, the message behind the PM operations standards is this is an open source language of value creation to help us move this industry from alleged junk fees to undeniable value creation. And there, in my work in this industry, there's been sort of this mindset that I've run into, which is like, well, we do a good job and people should just know that we do a good job. But I think what we find all too often is that if people don't know what you're doing because you're not communicating it to them in a value-oriented way on a regular basis, then probably they don't value what you do, at least not nearly as much as they could. So with that preamble, let's go ahead and just dive right into opening question here for the panel. And Pablo, you haven't had a chance to talk yet today, so I'm going to go to you on this one. Why is communication so essential to value creation for owners and residents? It almost sounds like pixie dust, right? Like you just, like it's insubstantial. Like the value creation is really how well we do the turnover. But I don't really think that's true. I think so much of the value is created in communication. Why is that?
When I think about the value that a property manager really has to offer, I think of the word trust. As a real estate investor myself, I don't manage my own properties because I have a belief that my property manager's data, their operations, their network, all these different things are going to make my 5 homes perform better than I can myself. When somebody rents a property, right? When somebody becomes your resident, they are entrusting you with essentially their sacred space, their space of safety. And when a vendor shows up at your property, they are trusting that you're setting them up to win and not lose money that day. So when I think of where communications adds value, it's that. It's how you communicate with folks in a way that helps people feel safe, helps them understand that you are a trusted source, right? Like for an owner, it validates the decision that they made to, pay you this pretty large sum of money every single year. And as the portfolio grows, continue to pay you more. As a resident, it communicates, hey, you made a great decision living here with your kids and all this kind of stuff. And to me, that's what communication is all about. It's all about how you can, I like to say that you never get to start a conversation with anybody. You can simply hope to enter the conversation in their head. And if you can adopt that mentality of communicating from a standpoint of what is this person thinking and how can I relate to that and how can I validate the things that they're doing and how can I, speak in terms of their priorities and offer them good choices, then everything is going to work better in your business, including the way that you communicate with your team. So that's where I see it. I see communication as the key to creating trust amongst the stakeholders, amongst your team, and being able to really convey the value of what you can do.
Lear, same question to you. Why is communication so essential and messaging? I'll insert that word messaging, so essential to creating value for owners and residents?
I'll try to actually take a story from my time in the Navy, which I think is a brilliant example of how we can use communications to help our clients value us. So I was a naval commander, and in my ship, we had multiple departments. And one of the departments was the mechanics department. And these were the folks that were really working the hardest, literally, like cleaning oil, fixing stuff, crazy, shifts. But when we went out to sea, so they had much shorter shifts because of noise issues and noise limitations on sitting in the engine rooms and things like that. And all the rest of the departments always looked at them and said, why are they getting so shorter shifts at sea and they're sleeping way better than everybody? Like, why? And eventually I thought to myself, how can we make the other departments appreciate what they're doing when they're not seeing what they're doing? Because all the other departments are working together while the mechanics are working in the engine room and nobody sees their work. So we've created this sort of like idea that, again, it's not necessarily something we can take into property management, but just maybe create some inspiration, is we did so like a student exchange program that we took one soldier from each department and made them sort of like work each day in the different department. 3 weeks later, nobody wanted to work in the mechanics departments for like ever. That's it. It was done. And the great thing about it that everybody started to appreciate the mechanics, and no longer there were issues about what they're doing, why are they sleeping more than we do when we go out to sea. Now, what I take from that example is that the more we'll be able as property managers to communicate the hard work that we're doing, that our clients normally don't see. If they don't see the late night calls or so like the calls during the weekends, they don't see the tough job we're doing and turning units and fixing them up as fast as possible so that you, the owner, will be able to get your funds as quickly as possible as well. They don't see that. And I think like once they'll see that, and once they'll see that hard work that we're doing, beyond just maybe the owner's statement that they're getting, which is sort of like the only thing they see in many cases, that is when we'll start to get the true and honest appreciation from their side, which I think will also help alleviate a lot of other concerns they might have when something will break, because they will understand that there is somebody that is putting so much work into my valuable asset that next time I will get pissed about something, I will probably think twice before taking the phone call and starting, getting angry or getting annoyed about something. So I think communication is also the path to appreciation. And once we get appreciation, we build a very strong relationship with our clients that can really last for a lifetime.
All right, Wolf, you're take what these gentlemen have just shared in terms of mindset and thinking and help us apply that to property management day in and day out.
So I think the first thing to understand is, although communication is key, communication is two-way. Like if me as a property manager, I'm just sending out auto-generated texts and emails every time I fart, every time a tenant farts, whatever, that's not communication. That's just giving updates, right? And so I think the key for value creation is the communication with the owner also needs to be coming back from the owner. What is the owner communicating to us? What is the owner saying to us? Are we listening? It's very easy to get stuck in, well, this is my process, take it or leave it. And to some extent that does create efficiency, but what are we communicating? as property managers, we're communicating that we're professionals, right? But what is the owner communicating back? And I think if we can listen to owners, especially before they sign that property management agreement, we can do a lot better in screening who we want to work with and who we don't want to work with, what properties we want to manage, which ones we don't want to manage. Because often in that sales pitch, we're just spouting out all kinds of stuff, right? And just want to look better, and we want to show all the things that we can do. How great is our tech? Owners don't care about any of that. The owners want to know, do you truly communicate, which is speaking and listening. And the other part with communicating is communicating with the property. What is the property telling you? What is its needs? And then how are you as the interpreter passing that on to the owner and helping them understand what their property is communicating? And I think that's where the value creation is being able to interpret the language of a property, the language of real estate to the owner, and being able to be that interpreter between the owner and the property.
And a lot of that comes down to being able to ask the right questions, and not be so focused on what you do and how you do it. This is a very, very process heavy industry that I think it's easy for us to get caught up in the trappings of process. But that's not really the level at which owners or properties think. So being able to identify the questions that get to the value and the emotional connections that people have around their real estate, around the management experience. Really great point there, Wolf. Okay, guys, so I really want to make this actionable for the attendees, and you guys set the stage really well here. Pablo, going to you on this one first. Where do you think are the biggest opportunities for value creation in the area of communication and messaging? Is it speed? Is it category design? Where are the biggest opportunities for value creation in communication that you see are untapped by most PMs?
Again, I really, my frame will always come from this idea of how do you, like, if you get trust, then that's the domino that knocks everything out, right? That knocks everything else, right? Like the faster you get to trust, the quicker the people will listen to you, the quicker the people will take the action that you say, right? The more that they're going to come to you when there's a problem instead of like avoiding you or trying to find a different kind of solution. Rephrase the question again, Danny, so that I can.
Where do you see are the biggest opportunities for value creation in terms of, the hundreds of property managers that are listening today? Where can they get the most bang for their buck in terms of if they picked one area to improve their communication, whether that's speed or content messaging? Where should that be?
Yeah, I got you. I feel an extreme amount of imposter syndrome in the stage with all of y'all who are so deep in this industry and have done this for so long. So I'm gonna speak to what I know, right? Like, yeah, I see now why you lollipopped category design in there for me. But for me, the great benefits that I have been able to experience have come from messaging. And when I say it's come from messaging is, as the most American person in my family and somebody that moved around 3 different continents from when I was born till I was 10 years old, I've always approached the world from an outsider trying to get in perspective. And I've always communicated with everybody from the standpoint of what is it that you are thinking right now that I can attach my message to and make it relevant for you, as opposed to like, what am I bringing to the table? Even in these and that's what I think that you can apply across all of your messaging. If in every single communication that you send out, you think, what is this person afraid of? What is this person, what is their context right now? And what is the frame from which they're looking at it? And try to look at it from that frame and then relate to that frame. So I just heard a couple, I saw the chat light up when Lior said, when they understand us, they're going to appreciate us. Yes, but I think people don't do business with people that they understand. People do business with people that they feel understand them, right? So if you can come from that standpoint, for me, my great success in like adapting messaging has been with JWB here. And it's really been coming here and taking JWB from thinking about, hey, how do we best show our ROI to how do we create a conversation around who else is investing in real estate. What are the pros and cons of Jacksonville versus other markets, right? Like really thinking from the standpoint of the consumer. And when you're talking to an investor, numbers are just numbers, right? Like they don't necessarily trust those numbers when you put it in front of them. You have to paint a picture around all of it, right? So starting from like, what are they thinking and what frame are they coming from, and going into storytelling like Lior did so well to make it fit, and telling an ongoing story, whether it is with your investors and the people that do business with you, with your residents and them, and having listening mechanisms out there to be able to continually tell a story and a way to do that. To me, that's worked wonders here at JWB for years. And I just think in general, that idea of like starting not from you out but from them in is the number one lever that you can pull across everything.
Wolfgang, that's kind of where you were headed with some of your comments early on. How do you work with your teams? Obviously, it's one thing to have this mindset as an owner, but from your teams who are making up communication on the fly, to leveraging email templates, to leveraging AI generated responses, how are you taking that understanding and trust oriented approach to communication?
So we have kind of a unwritten, well, it's written, I wrote it a couple months ago, but we've had it for a while. If they have to call an email, we failed. And so we're never going to get there where they never call or never email, but that's kind of our push, that we should be able to anticipate the information that they want when they want it. And we should be able to deliver in a way that makes sense to them and prevents them from having to call or email. Like I know come actually pretty soon, end of December, early January, what are all the questions going to be about? When do I get my 1099, right? So we did this several years ago. We just sent out a video that says, hey, this is when it's going to come. This is where you get it. We no longer get that question anymore. We eradicated it. We put it in our owner university, right? So we look at the messaging coming in and how can we anticipate what owners want, what tenants want, and when are they going to need it so that we can give it to them. Now, the hard part is giving it to them in a way that they want, right? It's easy to text and to email, right? That's the easy button. Picking up the phone call and having a conversation is not as easy for some as it is for others. But that's sometimes the most effective, right? Because you don't have all that back and forth and all that. You just squash it, get it dealt with, and you're good to go. Are we asking our owners or our tenants how they like to be communicated with? Or are we pigeonholing it into like, well, my process is built around automated emails, so that is how we communicate. You get emails. Doesn't matter. So I think as an owner of a management company, how do I help my team? I push them to figure out what is the channel of communication that particular client wants. So we have custom fields where we put what is their preferred method of contact, whether it's text, email, or phone. That way, when they pull up their contact, they know and they can start there. We also put in their NPS scores, because that kind of frames and helps our team understand who they're calling. Is this a promoter? Is it a hater? Is it just somebody that's neutral? Trying to give them information ahead of time so that they are feeling more confident about having that conversation. I think that's where the train gets off the rails with team members, is that they don't feel confident picking up the phone. They're afraid that the owner is smarter than them. And so they psych themselves out before they even have that conversation. That's why the text message or the email is really kind of that safety net. But trying to have face-to-face or, over the phone conversations, I feel is where I try to push my team. So we've done role playing, we do coaching, we listen to recorded phone calls and, kind of break them apart, what went well, what didn't, to help build capacity for them. But I've just found that the weak links are not understanding how do our owners like to be communicated with, and two, having our team members, regardless of their job title, feel confident in calling an owner.
Lear, I want to go to you with a question here, but before I do, just to piggyback off of what Wolf said there, We use a framework at ProfitCoach that's been really helpful for coaching our team on communication. And it's an acronym that uses the word ADEPT, A-D-E-P-T, ADEPT communication. Sadie, you can put this in chat. ADEPT A stands for assess the need. And that's where the questions that we've been talking about come in really in full force. I think sometimes our team members feel under-equipped to respond to an owner because they don't know how to ask questions and take control of the conversation. And if we can equip them with the right questions to ask, it puts them in a much stronger position of success. Assess the need. D, detail the solution. E, energize the conversation. P, provide closure. T, tell the truth always. And that has been a really helpful, actionable framework for us to review phone calls, emails, and other forms of communication. Lior, I know one of the things that came up for me as I got into this industry and started doing data research was this whole topic of churn. And as we analyzed churn, what I discovered is that no one in this industry ever loses customers due to customer service. It's always the real estate market. And so I say that a little tongue in cheek. And so whenever we would analyze this and dig in, it was like, it's a hot sales market. What can I say? And I get that's certainly a factor. But I know that one of the things that you are dialed into is this topic of churn connected to value creation, connected to communication, and positioning of the property management company as a fiduciary and an advisor, not just a service provider. Talk to us a little bit about what you see as the opportunities in that regard.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about this whole topic, the biggest opportunity that I see is the alignment of interests and positioning ourselves as partners to our clients and not just service providers. And partner is a big word, and I'll try to dial it down to like the actual maybe day-to-day where we can really use some of the examples that I'll share in a second in the existing processes. So number one is onboarding. Our first call with an owner. How do we set expectations? What do we talk about? Do we ask them what their goals are? Is it just to, park the property because they just inherited it and they're waiting to sell it in several months? Or is it somebody that is interested in growing their portfolio? How big do they want to grow? Do they, maybe they don't want to grow, but they want to optimize their existing portfolio. Maybe there are some underperforming properties that they would like to fix, renovate, sell, 1031 exchange to something else. Like when we ask that question of what is your goal, we can start to align the interests that are our interests as well. Because why is an owner eventually buying a rental property? And I'm talking about the ones who are doing it intentionally, right? Eventually, if you'll ask them, they'll tell you, I want to build up a portfolio. I want to build some passive income, maybe, build some kind of a business that works for me, that generates income, and I can live my lifestyle as I want it. And maybe leave a legacy for my kids, right? Or for my loved ones. Now, I think different from like some folks that were saying, specifically from like the owner side, that, yeah, my interests are completely misaligned with my property manager. I just want to make more money. I just want to save as much money as I can. My property manager only wants to make money as much as he can from me. But that's completely the wrong setting. It's completely the opposite. Because if you ask a property manager also, why, for example, why are you owning a property management company? Or why are we as a team building this property management company? We want to build a business that will cater to all of our team, that will provide income to our families, that will provide us the ability to also maybe leave a legacy for our loved ones as well. So at the end of the day, me as the property manager and you as the owner, we have the same goal. We want to build a portfolio. We want to build a well-performing portfolio that can provide you that financial stability. Same goes for us, because if you will have better properties, we will have better properties. If you will have better performing properties that don't take too much headaches from our team as well, we will be also happy to manage them. So eventually we have a long-term goal that is the same. So if we can use the onboarding process and talk about that with our clients, we can set the stage from the beginning to a long-term partnership that will make different challenges along the way mutual, and not just you expecting me to fix everything in an unrealistic speed or way. We're working on this together. We both want to fix this property. We both want to rent it out as fast as possible. So I think the biggest opportunity that I see, number one, is in the onboarding, is setting that alignment of interest that we're both working for the same long-term goal. And the second thing is, let's say if we have onboarding, ongoing, and then exit, I would say is the ongoing, which is super, super important. One of the things that we are pushing all of our clients to do is to conduct performance review sessions with their clients using Blanket. Or if you're not using Blanket, you can use just, spreadsheets or gathering the data yourself and do it manually. But if you'll do just one 15-minute call, 15 to 20-minute call a year, once a year with your clients, talking about the performance of their properties, understanding how much cash flow they generated, how much appreciation has this property gained, how much equity do you have in your properties, and then maybe talk about the stuff that are not working well. And as Daniel, as you said, like always tell the truth, right? Don't be afraid to talk about things that are not going well with the property, because things that are not going well with the property sometimes are an opportunity for us also as the property managers to generate more revenue. Let's say we have a construction company that can make more revenue from renovations. So if we'll talk about a property that is not performing well because it's super old, there's a lot of issues going on, by us taking on that additional job, this is another revenue generator for the company. So don't be afraid to talk about like the bad stuff as well. And then finish that call with the goals. Again, what are the goals for next year? What do we want to achieve together? And by doing so, we can bring more growth in sales if we're also doing sales for our clients, by buying more properties, 1031 exchanging more properties, but by also probably eliminating a lot of the noise that we might get when we will encounter challenges. And we will eventually. This is the business. We're in the business of solving problems for our clients. So if we set the stage during onboarding and create that alignment of interest, but also we continue with that same approach of acting as a trusted advisor, acting as a trusted partner to our clients, we will definitely win clients for life that will be working with us to grow the number of properties we're managing.
That's great. Love the picture you painted there, Lior. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit brass tacks here in terms of some specific communication metrics that people should be considering. Wolf, what's hottest for you in terms of the numbers that you're tracking right now with regard to communication? Anything particular that you're seeing moving the needle? What are the opportunities?
Yeah, so I think first response time and time to resolve are the two that we're focusing highly right now, simply because we use Lead Simple and they have that on their dashboard nicely. So it's like real easy to get those two items for phone calls, texts, and emails. We're trying to keep that under 3 hours for both of those. And so far we've been able to do that. And that has increased our NPS scores quite a bit. The other one is looking at number of service requests submitted by a tenant after move-in, that first 30 days. I think that metric really drives how the rest of that lease is going to go. If they have a bad move-in experience, that's just really hard to shake. They're going to kind of have that, not always, but usually kind of a salty vibe the rest of that tenancy, just because it just didn't start well. So we look at the number of work orders submitted in the first 30 days. And then the other one is number of inquiries from a new owner, first 30 days as well, to see, did our owner university really do anything? Is it helping to resolve those issues? On the sales side, did we overpromise, underdeliver? That's something that I think all companies battle, making sure that over anxious salespeople don't commit more than what really we're offering. So those are the four that we have in our EOS scoreboard and that we look at weekly.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. We're going to start to wrap up here, and we're going to put ourselves in the future. Going to go to you on this one, Pablo. It's 2030 again. These property management operations standards have been out for 5 years, and we have 5 years of data and trends around performance and communication. What does value creation look like in 2030 as it pertains to owner and resident communication. I'm going to sound you guys all off on this one as we wrap up here.
Am I a cyborg at this point, or am I still human?
Did I say sideboard? What?
No, am I like
hybrid?
By 2030, am I still fully
Oh yeah,
human?
yeah,
or am
yeah. I
part
see.
machine?
I'm tracking with you. Yeah, you're still human. You're still human.
Okay. Well, I'll pretend to be human in 2030 then. You know, as I think about like the trends that are happening in the world right now, you know, to me, AI is the biggest trend that's happening, the biggest like giant context shift that's happening. And what is AI doing? AI is doing a couple of different things. AI is number one on the trust factor, right? Like we used to, in the 60s, we used to see like 19 ads a day. In like the early 2000s, we would see like 70 ads per day. Now we see 4,000 to 10,000 ads per day. And AI is only going to continue to make that thing way worse, right? So like the ability to actually like contextualize things for people and cut through the noise because of AI is very, very real. So the closer that you can get to your clients and the more human you are to them, the more that you are going to win paradoxically in this AI age. And then as far as the metrics, you know, I really believe that right now what's happening is there's kind of like 3 generations of solutions in the property management space, right? Like there's like the property management friendly stuff that, you know, was there before, and now they're applying it to single family home property managers. There's the property management native, single family home property native softwares like the Lead Simples of the world, right? Stuff like that. And second nature. And then there's a new generation that is, and that was built before, you know, before AI. And now there's like a new, like Blanket, like Venderoo, these like single family home property management native, AI native solutions. And I think as these native solutions get plugged into like the AI native solutions get plugged into the existing open infrastructure property management native stuff that's pre-AI, somebody's going to figure out the right mix of these like agentic AI processes and stuff that's going to break the frame on all of these concepts, right? Like they're going to break the frames on all of these metrics, and it's going to happen market by market. And the moment that one person in your market breaks it, they're going to set the standard for your local market. That's what they're going to require. They're either going to be able to like greatly reduce their costs, or they're going to greatly increase the quality, right? So like, I think by 2030, this has happened across multiple markets, and we're going to I think it's phenomenal that these metrics came out today, because we're going to see in real time the effect of this like AI adoption and the winners and losers moving into that 25% range, that 20% range, as they adopt it and as they adopt it correctly, versus the ones that have this like attachment to their prior systems that, because it works so well, they're going to stick to that, and the cost of changing is too quickly. So yeah, that's what I see in 2030 happening. These metrics are going to be completely flipped as far as like capacity, quality, and pain for owners of running property management companies. We're not going to be able to recognize it.
Awesome. All right, sake of time here, guys. Lior, 30-second wrap-up comment there on the future of value creation as it relates to communication. We'll go to you, Wolf.
Okay, 30 seconds. That will be tough. But I think what I imagine seeing in 2030 is an asset management industry that is not a property management industry. I believe that with all the advancements that happening right now with the power of AI, as Pablo said, every one of the functions within the company and the team members will be empowered. That will allow us to really take the industry to the next level, which is turning into asset managers, which is what we are. We are managing investments. We're not managing properties at the end of the day. These are investment properties that we're managing. And I think as we grow forward, this is also where the value creation opportunity even expands and will enable us to differentiate ourselves as property managers. Because look at the single family rental industry. Before 2010, they still call it the mom and pop industry, but you had no institutional investors in this space. Then Blackstone came in, a lot of big real estate funds came in as well, and suddenly the industry, the single family rental industry, started to institutionalize. We're now at a point where there's still a very low percent of the market. The institutional players are about 2% of the market, but the industry has evolved immensely in the past 10 years. And now we are sort of like handed this asset class that has between 11 to 12 million rental property owners that are owning these rental properties. They don't have the investor relations mindset. They don't have asset managers to handle it for them and really be that asset manager and trusted advisor. So I think in 2030, and I hope to be there, we'll start to see actually the property manager role turn into an asset manager role.
Great summary, Wolf. Round us out here.
Yeah, I think AI killed property management, and if we're going to communicate, it's going to be asset management. I 100% agree with Lior that we haven't been able to really communicate well as property managers because we've been so busy doing stupid stuff. And now the AI is around and we have all these tech tools, we can unload some of that. So we are now free to communicate, and that could be, quarterly owner calls. It can be, annual portfolio reviews. Like there's so many different ways that we can do that it really is going to put us into that fiduciary category of, asset management fiduciary, which is going to be interesting because that's kind of a counter to the fee maxing industry as well. So we'll see how those two play out. But the leverage that we've gained from technology can't just be we're more efficient. It has to be that we can now communicate, we can create value, and that's what we're going to be compared against, those that can and those that can't.
Awesome. Sounds good. Sorry, that was a great summary. And I wanted to call a particular shout out to Kelly's summary of Wolf's summary, which was leverage tech to bring back touch. That was well said, Kelly. Thank you. All right. If you can throw up my screen, Brad, we are just about ready to go to our last breakout. If you weren't here earlier, I want to give you guys, and some of you have to run for the rest of the day, an opportunity to get a really concrete resource that will allow you to take action on what you heard today. I don't think any of us want to leave untapped value and efficiency creation opportunities on the table. And so what we want to offer you as part of this event is the opportunity to take the Property Management Operations Standards Diagnostic. And this is an eye-opening experience that will help you ask questions about your processes you didn't know you should be asking. Secondly, give you a scorecard that compares you to 60 industry targets on 8 core processes to really start up a conversation with your team. All right, team, here's where the industry is in terms of targets. Here's where we are. What can we do? And then lastly, help you create a plan to implement the PM operations standards in your business. So we want to help you take action. Get this kind of a scorecard that you can see flashed up on the screen here. And how it works is you complete a survey. We send you the scorecard. You hop on a call with our team to learn how to implement the PM operations standards. We're focusing on working with clients in the Lead Simple platform right now to do this so that you can unlock the next level of client experience and team efficiency. All right. If that's of interest to you, if you feel like that would be valuable, just go ahead and I'm going to relaunch the poll here. Say yes to this poll. And we'd be happy to get that scheduled for you. If you already said yes, don't need to say it again. But we want to just give everybody this opportunity before we wrap up here. All right. We are going to go to our last segment of breakouts. Again, about 12 minutes here focused on communication. You just heard a lot of ideas in terms of onboarding communication, setting expectations, how to have regular calls that position you as an asset advisor, as a fiduciary. The future of communication is the ability to leverage AI to expand the degree of touch in your organization. We're going to go to the breakout right now and give everybody the opportunity to apply this, come away with some insights, and then we'll wrap it up right at the top of the hour after that. If you want to go ahead and launch the breakouts, Alicia, that's great. Go ahead and click the button to join your group and dive in for about 10 minutes to apply these concepts for one last opportunity to derive value from these peer conversations. All right, everybody, we are going to bring it back here for our last share out as we wrap up. Thanks so much for participating in the last breakout, and excited to hear what insights came out for you. We are going to wrap up with a last opportunity to pick one more winner of our $100 Amazon gift card. We'll do that in just a second, right at the very end, and with that little last pop of energy. And in the meantime, as everybody comes in here, want to just open it up. What was an insight that you got from this last breakout session? But in general, we're just going to do a little bit of an appreciative closing here. What is one person or one insight that you appreciated from the day? Go ahead and just raise your hand. That's something you can do right there in your Zoom control panel. Want to get a little bit of audience participation as we wrap up the day here. What's one person that you appreciated, one insight that's really going to stick with you coming away from today? Let's do a little bit of an appreciative gratitude closing here as we wrap things up. Robert, going to you. Thanks for being here. I've allowed you to talk. Just unmute yourself and you're on stage.
Danny, your music's
Yeah, the
still
big
going.
thing is just realizing that, you know, a lot of people have similar issues we're all encountering across the country, right? And getting some of that, just being able to talk to other PMs and getting their insight and their ideas has really kind of started my brain working in terms of brainstorming, how can I improve things? Because we're always wanting to constantly improve. But the comments that, you know, Wolf made about communication, it was just kind of a light bulb for me, and I totally agree. You know, a lot of times you just need to pick up the phone and you can solve a lot of problems versus everybody who's wanting to stick to only email and text, and things can snowball because you're taking emotion out of email and text. Whereas if you pick up the phone and just listen to people, sometimes they want to be heard, they are really appreciative, and you know, it actually help your relationship with your clients in the long term.
Great insight. Love that. Thanks, Robert. Thanks for being here today. I'll pick the next person in just a moment, but yeah, go ahead and throw up your hand there, and love to hear any gratitude that you have for an insight you learned or someone that brought some meaning to your day. You can call out people here as well. But I just wanted to share one myself. Really thankful to the production team here at ProfitCoach, helping us get all of these fine people on the webinar, the panelists, the attendees. Really thankful for you guys, Alicia, Sadie, Anna, and more, and Brad running the video switcher for us today as well. Thanks so much. And also really thankful for our partners. And I will not mention them all by name because I don't want to leave anybody out, but thank you guys for being part of this great event, and we really appreciate your contributions. I'm thankful also to God for giving us all of these resources that we're talking about today. We have a lot of things to be thankful for. We have people on our team that are creating value. We have residents to serve, owners to partner with. Those are all positive things, blessings that I believe come from God, things that we can steward. And if we begin every day with this gratitude mindset, what are the things that God has given me that I can maximize, leverage to bless more people, create more value? I think gratitude is the way that we will be creating more value in this industry with a focus on value creation. Brad, any final thoughts from you as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I just have one overarching thought that I've been thinking through for a long time and want to share, and that is that property management always has been, and I think always will be, a relationships business. And we can never automate our way out of that. AI is not going to make that not true. Optimal, efficient processes and the property management operation standards are not going to change the fact that this is a relationships business. Those are tools, and those are things that can help us move forward and help us, you know, get more efficient and build a better business. But at the end of the day, I just love your point about gratitude. That really is everything. If you come to work with the mindset of, yeah, maybe these people, I dislike them or like them, but I'm going to build all these processes and get the people out of the way and not have to deal with any people, you're in for a really rough time. And I think the best companies are the companies who understand that relationships have to come first. And also we have to use these tools like the operation standards, like AI, like these software partners, you know, to make things as efficient as possible and remove roadblocks rather than remove people.
Awesome. We're going to wrap with that, folks. Oh, no, we've got the $100 gift card. Brad, who's our final winner for the third gift card?
We do. Let me confirm attendance because you must be present to win. And this individual is present to win. His name is Paul Henderson. Paul Henderson.
Paul Henderson. Oh, yeah.
The winner.
Rhino Property Management, if I'm not mistaken.
All right.
All right. Congrats, Paul. All right, everybody, we are going to wrap right there. Thank you so much for being part of this event. Once again, thank you to all of our partners. Thank you to our panelists. And thank you, property managers, for making this industry a phenomenal place to work. We are so thankful for the day in and day out relationships that we have with all of you. Thanks for carving out so much of your time today for the PM Operations Summit. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we'll see you next year for the 2025 PM Operations Summit, because I'm pretty sure we're going to do this again. All right, everybody, have a great day.